Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOT, and joined as always by my guy Cody Saftic. You guys can follow him at CJ Saftic on Twitter. And we are here propping you up for the big UFC 261 fight card this weekend. We got 3 title fights, co-maining, co-co-maining, and maining this card. So I can't wait to go through it with Cody here. And then we got some decent fights trickled throughout it, right? We got some Chinese UFC debutants trying to ride the coattails of Weili Zhang this weekend. We'll see how they fare in the UFC, and a couple other good fights, right? Weidman versus Hall too. Who's not stoked for that? And then obviously Jimmy Crute versus Anthony Smith is rounding out the main card there. Cody, what are your preliminary thoughts about this card? Are you jacked for it? Do you give a fuck about Usman Masvidal too? How do you feel about it?
I don't really care about Usman Masvidal too, but it's still a great fight. Who doesn't want to see that? Who's going to rightfully turn that down? We're obviously all tuning in, and I think it's a good spot to make money as well. When you look at UFC's efforts to make a good card, a lot of the time it needs supporting cast. It needs these other fights as well. You can't just have – look at the last time Kamaru Usman fought. There's nothing on the card. Absolutely abysmal. At least this time they're giving him 2 title fights. And the Rose Namajunas fight versus Weili Zhang, that's going to be very exciting stuff, very high level. That's a fun fight. You've got Valentina Shevchenko, who figures to actually be in a legitimate fight this time around, so a little more intriguing than her last set of fights. As far as the main card goes, my boy Jimmy Crute, as far as the main card goes, legit. As far as the prelims go, you know me, you know yourself. We're obviously going to watch it. We have a lot of interest there as well, but it rapidly does fall off a cliff. So we'll save our hot takes for the important fights, maybe some of these lower-end ones. Don't want to waste your too much time. Unless there's a prop that you like, obviously. A lot of it's a stretch. A lot of it's like, don't know if I want to put my money in those spots. So we'll get to them very shortly, I'm sure.
The one UFC debut that I think a lot of people are looking forward to are the return of the fans. That's one thing that's going to be big here. They're down there in Florida where they just don't give a fuck about the coronavirus, apparently. So they're selling out that ViStar Memorial Arena down there. I believe they have about 15,000 fans that are going to be in attendance. So I can't wait to see how that added change to things since we've been so used to it for over the last year now. I can't wait to see how that affects anything. And more often than not, how it affects the judging again, right? We didn't see that big of a difference with the judging with the fans and without the fans. The judges still suck. Nothing changed. So I'm looking forward to seeing that aspect of it as well, too. All right. Before we kick things off, I do want to remind you guys, Cody is going to be back on the show tomorrow. We're doing the Ultimate Weigh-In show on my channel here at 9 p.m. Eastern. It'll be me, Cody, Dan Levy from Half the Battle on Best Fight Picks, as well as Brett Apley from Daily Fan MMA. We got a star-studded crew for you guys tomorrow, so I'm sure you guys will want to check it out. Me and Cody might abbreviate a little bit today just so that we can go a little bit harder tomorrow with those other guys, and I can't wait to do that show for you guys. So once again, 9 p.m. tomorrow, huge all-star stack show for the Ultimate Weigh-In show. All right. Let's kick this thing off right away. We got Ariane Carnelossi versus Liang. We got, what are the odds here? Minus 220 on Carnelossi, plus 180 on Liang. I'll keep this one short. You know, there's a lot of question marks about these UFC debutants that are coming into the UFC from China. We know they're obviously all the way from the UFC Shanghai PI that they got going on. They're trying to foster these guys over there and try to get them UFC ready, bring them over to the North American fans. And obviously, they're going to be riding the coattails of Weili Zhang going into this card. Liang is the one that I feel like I got the most out of when I'm running the tape on these foreign websites, since that's the only place I can find tape on these fighters. And she seems to be having a grapple-heavy approach, right? She likes to use her wrestling. She doesn't have the greatest setups for her takedowns. She's shooting from like miles away at times, but luckily for her, she's not fighting crazy competition, so she's actually able to secure these takedowns and ride them out from on top, sometimes finding the choke, sometimes getting the ground and pound, or sometimes getting reversed and getting finished herself. The most notable names on the record, she's choked out Liana Jojua earlier in her career, and then she also lost to Juliana Velasquez when she made the trip on over to Bellator, and then pretty much never fought for them again. Pretty much just did the job for them, if that's what you want to call it. Carnelossi looks like a mini John Lineker. She goes out there and just swings bombs, and she's trying to move forward and trying to knock your head off. And the funny thing is, I'll let you know about this, Cody. I was searching through my GIFs. I typed in steroids, and literally, she was like one of the first 10 things that popped up, because she looked. I'm not even pulling your leg here, dude. It blew me away that Carnelossi was one of the first ones. Like, I thought they would have had TRT Tour on there. They would have had fucking Brock Lesnar on there or something like that. But Ariane Carnelossi was one of the first ones that actually popped up when I typed that in. But regardless, she fights like that, right? A lot of people are expecting this fight to finish under 2.5, considering that the odds are like minus 185-ish, minus 200 for the under 2.5. But I feel like you have a different take on this fight. Personally, I got Liang with very little confidence. I think she'll get her grappling game going and possibly pull off a submission in the second or third round here. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, again, so this is very low-level, middling affair, but I think the favorite is rightfully so Carnelossi. The UFC hasn't really given her that much. Sorry, haven't given Liang really that easy of a fight in her first time out. When you look at Carnelossi, she made her UFC debut against Angela Hill, which talk about a difficult outing for anybody.
Yeah.
Coming in the UFC, make your debut against a very savvy veteran of the game who's had 15 plus fights in the UFC at this point, and is a ranked contender still to this day. Has fought some of the best girls. It's a tough debut. She's actually a slight favorite coming into her UFC debut. People had high expectations for her because she's just so physically strong, very muscular. As you mentioned with the steroid allegations, that aside, she's got great genetics because she's just very physically imposing. The one thing she does is just like John Lineker, she likes to go out there and she likes to wing those bombs. She has 8 of her pro wins are way by knockout. I think she has 1 by way of submission. She is not a submission threat at all. When you look at Liang, that's basically all of her losses have been coming by way of submission, is that these girls are able to out-grapple her. They're physically stronger than her. Like you said, she likes to grapple herself, but all of the names on her record, theoretically, her losses, are notable, right? You look at Lilia Shakarova. Shakarova fought in the UFC. She just lost to Lauren Murphy not that long ago. Is she a very high-level talent? Well, that remains to be seen, but at least what I'm saying is that she made it to the UFC. Juliana Vasquez, currently 11-0, judo black belt, current Bellator champion that beat Ilian McFarland. A very high-rated fighter. Maria Agapova, again, say what you will about her, but a UFC veteran, someone that eventually made it to the dance. And then this Qileng, which is her last loss, it's almost 3 years ago. Girl's 11-3, 3-fight winning streak, very strong, very physically imposing. It's not as if she's out there losing a scrub. For the most part, it's these girls that have gone on to that next level, to perform at that next level. But that last loss that she had against Jan, 3 years ago now, she's 21 years old, man. So that's the one thing about her, is that she's now only 24 years old. She's won 4 fights in a row. She's getting better. She has this UFC Performance Institute, China, to work at now with Dean Amessinger and a host of other talent. They've poured millions of dollars into this Performance Institute to try to develop that next level of Chinese athlete in order to tap into that market. She's one of 3 fighters that we're about to talk about. She fits that exact same mold. Do I think she's a world beater? No. Do I think she's going to win in the spot? No. Well, I'm going after with the overs in here. Because again, when you look at her and how she's losing her fights, they're by way of submission. Carnelossi, not really a submission threat. So I think that when it breaks down, Liang's going to probably, just like you said, shoot from too far out, try to make this a grappling exchange, but ultimately get reversed. But in clinching up, in shooting those takedowns, in doing all of that, it's going to slow the action down. So Carnelossi, as physically strong as she is, if she doesn't knock Liang out, Liang's never been knocked out, she doesn't knock her out, we're going to bank some rounds here. She's going to try to, the Chinese fighter is going to try to wear on her and tire her out. But I do think that Carnelossi is just too physically strong to get taken down. She probably will reverse and end up on top. Hopefully separate, stand back up, wing a couple bombs, land a couple shots, and then ultimately break her down en route to banking a couple of these rounds in. So again, I don't love these early fights from a betting perspective, but we're in the business of talking about some props that I wouldn't mind in these spots. And the one that I'm looking at here is the over 1.5, a minus 135. Even if Carnelossi does end up just battering her and taking her out, it's going to be after that over 1.5. And if for whatever reason this girl's made a ton of improvements and is really coming into her own, and Carnelossi has so much muscle at this weight class that she fatigues really late for whatever reason. Again, I don't see this happening, but for whatever reason, if it happens late, it's going to happen late. It's not happening early. So the over 1.5 minus 135, I think that's the best action here. But that price tag, 420, a few days removed from the real 420, Carnelossi by decision, it's something we're having a look at. So Carnelossi inside the distance is even money, but Carnelossi by decision is 4-1. So they don't know if she's going to finish or if she's not going to finish. However, one pays way better than the other. And how does she win her fights? How does she get the finish? With the knockout. And again, with Liang, she's top. She's not getting knocked out. She's getting out grappled. I don't necessarily know that Carnelossi brings that to the table. But then as I say all that, not that this matters, but it is worth noting, Carnelossi just got awarded her BJJ black belt. She's a trading partner with like Laura Procopio and Ketlin Vieira. And I'm sure she has been making a lot of improvements. Could she get the submission? Yeah. I'm just saying, if we're looking at her record and how she traditionally wins these fights, John Lineker's got a black belt too, and he's actually got a nasty guillotine choke. But like John Lineker's not really trying to use the guillotine choke or the jiu-jitsu. He's trying to smash your face off. And if she has a similar approach, I think we're going to bank some rounds. So the one I like the most is the over 1.5, and then beyond that, small action shot on that by decision, Carnelossi plus 420.
Yeah, I didn't even give you guys a prop. My prop I said was Liang by submission, which is plus 450. I think we're going to get some violence in this fight under 2.5 at minus 185. Chalky as it is, I don't mind that spot personally. All right, let's move on to the next one. We got 3 straight fights where we got the Chinese debutants coming in. This one, I know I'm going to absolutely butcher the name, and I can't wait for John Anik to hear to say it first so I can actually get it correct. We got Jeff Molina going up against Qileng Aori. Very tough one, right? We got even money here on both sides. We don't really know what we're going to get from Aori truly. Like out of all the tape that I was able to find, he was the one that I was able to find least on. But he seems like a decent striker, awkward from the distance. Jeff Molina, obviously a great striker himself too, has submission game up his sleeve. Trained by the infamous James Krause, so you know he's going to be well coached and well directed in that fight. But I feel like this one is going to play out on the feet. I feel like they're pretty much just going to be point fighting with each other. I'd have to give the ever so slight advantage of power to Aori. I'm just not sure by how much. But again, I need to see these guys over in the UFC a little bit more against legitimate competition and not just regional guys from Asia, right? We know regional from like Asia is just like, I don't even know if they'd cut it in Alaska FC. Let's be honest, right? A lot of these guys aren't even like up to that level. Exactly. So I do like Molina ever so slightly here, but just not with the utmost confidence. In terms of a prop, I think this is one that, like you're saying, it is going to bank rounds. Fight starts round 2, minus 185. Fight starts round 3, plus 135. Oh, sorry, I am looking at the Carnelossi and Liang fight. I apologize. The Molina and Aori fight. We got fight starts round 2 minus 650. Yeah, crazy chalk there. Fight starts round 3 minus 325. But Molina by decision is the way that I'd approach it if you have a gun to my head, and that's plus 190. And I don't think that's too bad of a price tag here. But there's just so many unknowns about the Chinese fighter here that I'm just like, why even waste my money? Why am I going to this level of degeneracy to try to make some money this weekend? But I'm leaning Molina. Do you see anything else different on tape that that sways you the other way?
No, not really. I mean, with Molina, his little claim to fame there being out of Glory MMA and Fitness in Kansas with James Krause is that for 2020 anyways, he was like their best teammate of the year and their most improved fighter of the year, right? 2 awards that really just suggest that this is a guy that's in the gym all the time. He's, you know, attending all the classes. He's doing his 2-a-days, and he's still only 23 years old. And I think that you're seeing rapid improvement out of him. He actually starts his pro career 1 and 2. And since then, it's just like you see this new vibe to him where he's making these rapid improvements. When you look at Glory MMA and Fitness and you look at the cast of characters and guys that have coming out of that gym, they're not necessarily on paper the most athletic. They're not necessarily on paper the most skillful guys. They all do have heart. They come in with great game plan. They're always in really good shape. Cardio is a weapon. And I think that this kid is going to really benefit from being around these guys day in and day out and making those improvements. So when you see him beat Kenny Porter, that would have been his most notable win. He's fought a lot of soft competition, but beating Kenny Porter is something notable at the very least for a young fighter. And then he gets that Contender Series fight against Jacob Silva. Now, it's not exactly the toughest task for him, Jacob Silva, but it is worth noting that he breaks his foot in the first round, right? Tells his coach, he's like, listen, man, I broke my foot. And to be able to persevere from that as a young 23-year-old fighter, that's all great stuff to bank in here. Now, he was supposed to fight Zaruk Adeshev, so he knows he gets the contract. Dayton tells him he gets the contract, end of the episode. He's preparing for a UFC fight. He's got Zaruk Adeshev, who's a striker. You know the game plan is going to take this guy down. And Molina tests positive for COVID. You know, does that affect him? Did it throw his training off? Is he not in great shape? I don't know. But if you want to just discontinue that, you've got a young green fighter, probably going to have a little bit of a speed advantage. He's going to be able to fight better from the outside. I do think he's got decent grappling as well. If he could force his fight to the ground, he'd have some success. Cardio doesn't seem to be an issue as well. Barring he doesn't break his foot or something like that again, I think he's going to have some success standing in this fight. But I don't think he's the physically stronger guy, right? If Aori's just able to close this distance, I mean, they call the guy the Mongolian murderer for a reason. You don't just walk into a nickname like that. You know what I mean? You got to go and earn a nickname like that. And see, he's one of these aggressive guys that's going to come forward and push the pace a little bit. I wouldn't say push the pace like ton of volume, but he hits really hard. So my issue is that we get screwed every single week on bad judging. And this is the kind of fight that I can see Molina doing a lot of good work on the outside, like a Chris Gutierrez, using the leg kicks, using that range, using your jab, picking him up, but the power's not quite there. And the flip side to that, you have Aori marching him down. He's got forward pressure. He's got perceived aggression. He's going to be landing the more eye-catching shots. And then it's going to the scorecards, and it's really just, what did you favor on that night? I can see it being close. I can see it being a split. I can see people complaining online. So if I don't want a gun to my head pick, whatever side you take the guy by decision, I think, and it's good plus money both sides. I think it's plus 190 for Molina It's plus 175 for Aori. That's fine. The fight to go the distance, which is what I like the most, it is minus 215. It is chalked up, not great looking at this point, but I think that neither guy has the power to knock the other guy out. I don't think submission game really comes into it. If it does, it'd be Molina. Be smart game plan. Kraus will have the smart game plan, but the Mongolian murder is kind of a big, imposing, tough guy, right? So we don't want to invest a ton of money here, but the play would be fight goes the distance minus 215. And again, you told me gun to my head. I want to say Molina. Got a feeling that the UFC's Performance Institute, China, multi-million-dollar facility. They're in Jacksonville, Florida. Judges could easily go the other way.
Yeah.
The Chinese fighter might get the rub in a close fight. Carnelossi's fight shouldn't be all that close. She should be okay. Fight like this, and we're going to talk about the next one as well. If they're closer fights, then you're going to have an issue on your hands. But I guess very tentatively, I would take Molina as well.
All right. I can't wait to see it truly play out, right? We want to find out more about this Chinese fighter, especially with that nickname, man. God damn, that guy's got to have some serious skills that we're going to be able to see on display this weekend. All right, let's move on to the next one. We got Zhu Rong going up against Rodrigo Vargas here, and Zhu Rong coming in minus 250 favorite. It almost seems like a setup fight for him here to get that first win in the UFC, get acclimated with the North American scene here. But Rodrigo Vargas, what does he truly bring to the table, right? You're talking about a guy that was a pretty hefty underdog going into that Brock Weaver the last time around, the Brock Weaver fight, until he illegally kneed him. And that was one of the worst illegal knees that we've ever seen, right? You saw DJ get put up by Adriano Moraes the other week, but that was legal. But this one, god damn, that was really, really bad. But the interesting part is he was actually winning that fight up until that point, right? The fight before that against Alex De Silva, he was the one getting grapple fucked for 15 minutes. And he's like, you know what? Let me try this out. Let me try it out and try to do it to my next opponent. The only thing you forgot is that you just got knee a down opponent to the head because this guy's just so violent and vicious. But it seemed like it was working pretty well for him. But then again, talking about Brock Weaver, right? I don't even know if Brock Weaver's in the UFC anymore. It's the level of competition is just so low. But what I've been seeing from Zhu Rong, and I might be wrong here, but there's no way this guy's 21 years old. You fucking kidding me? At 20 fights, this guy's 21. He's 21 years old. I'm calling the bluff here. Song Yadong was 14 when he came into the UFC. It just doesn't make any fucking sense to me. But I think out of all the three debutants that we got here, Rong looks like he has the most potential. He looks like the more well-rounded guy, solid grappling, good striking, solid power in his hands too. His 3 losses have come via submission, so that's something that he's going to have to worry about moving forward. I just don't think that's something he's going to have to worry about here with Rodrigo Vargas. I expect this fight to primarily play out on the feet, and I think that in that situation, we'll get Rong having the upper hand pretty much at all times in this fight. It is an MMA fight at the end of the day, right? You are going to have to worry about the power coming back your way, as Vargas is pretty heavy-handed himself. But I think that we'll get the better technique, the better overall MMA game here from Zhu Rong. And I think he's actually live to finish Vargas here. And the prop that I'm looking at here is going to be Rong by KO is plus 135. I wish it was slightly better than that, to be honest. Even if you want to take the under 2.5 at minus 160, it's a little bit chalky, but it does cover the possibility of Vargas going out there and getting a knockout of his own. Am I willing to go out there and invest minus 250 on a guy making his UFC debut? Nah, we've seen it time and time again this year, right? Lupita Godina, say what you want about that decision, right? That she lost the fight. At the end of the day, she fought closely enough that one judge or 2 judges actually believed that Jessica Penne won the fight. Same thing could happen here, but I don't see it going to a judge's scorecard. I do see it ending inside the distance. I think it's going to be Rong that gets his hand raised, but I'm not investing any serious money into this fight. We need to see these guys fight legitimate competition before we can start riding on home that these guys are worth minus 250. So if you are looking to get the best value out of it, which is why we do this propping you up show, plus 135 on the KO line seems decent. You're getting some good plus money there, but let's see him prove himself first before we truly invest in him. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I mean, listen, not only is he making his UFC debut, which is always tough to get behind, like you said, not only is he an unheralded Chinese prospect who hasn't really fought anybody of note so far, all these big question marks, he's 21 years old, man.
Yeah.
Think about the monumental task of going out there and fighting in the UFC, the world's premier mixed martial arts organization at 21. I mean, he turned pro 2 weeks after his 15th birthday. He was 16 years old, just turned 16. And he's fighting in professionally in China. And he's 21 and he's got 20 pro fights. Like, that's all he's done. It's just fight, 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 fight. Like, that's crazy to me. But at the same time, like, you're going to need some time to properly develop. And you see Song Yadong's a great example. You know, here's a solid Chinese prospect who has to leave, come to Team Alpha Male, and go through trials and tribulations, have these close fights, make those improvements. And it looks like he is making improvements. But you still got to go through all of that. Rong is still very green. He's still got a long ways to go. You know, similar to a Sage Northcutt when he burst into the UFC, it was like exciting to see him there, but he's so young, man. He's so green. So with Rong, like you mentioned, we're gonna need to see this guy fight a few times. Now the UFC's apparently got this heavy investment in these 3 Chinese fighters to kick off the card, and realistically, they haven't really done them overly great favors in the matchmaking front. Like, by the numbers, the most realistic one to win is beating Jeff Molina. It's a 50-50 fight. It's a close fight. The other two, it's like, you know, Rong's got a favorable matchup, and you know, Liang probably doesn't. Rong's got to go out there and he's got to do the damn thing. But there's not really all that many easy fights. And giving him Kazula Vargas, on paper, he's 0-2 in the UFC. On paper, he doesn't really bring much to the table. On paper, he's like a few months removed from his 36th birthday, hasn't fought in over a year. Like, there's a lot that, you know, you can easily discredit this guy for. But at the same time, man, like, he's a full-grown man. He's already fought twice in the UFC, and he's really durable. That's his key here. He's a very durable guy. So with Rong, even though he's got these 17 victories, he finishes a lot of these guys relatively quick. His cardio doesn't seem to be an issue. I like this guy's striking. I think it's dynamic. I think he's improving a lot. At 21, you know, it makes me salivate to think how improved and how good he'll be at 25 or at 30. You know, like, the sky's the limit for this guy if he puts himself in the best position to train and the best training partners available and continues to make improvements. Like, he's got the goods. It's going to be a while to tie it all together. And with Kazula Vargas, man, let's not discredit the fact that he's got 4 pro losses, right? Of those 4 pro losses, he was disqualified against Brock Weaver, so, you know, it is what it is. Alex Da Silva, BJJ black belt. Alex Da Silva, you know, strong physical guy, good grappling. He's not able to take him out. Fight goes 3 rounds. This Marco Antonio LPDO fight, right? It's like 4 years ago. Loses a split decision. Again, goes the distance. And then Jose Caceres, only man to finish him. Hits him with a reverse triangle choke. So 1, reverse triangle choke. 2, Jose Caceres is also the only guy to ever defeat Kamaru Usman, submitting him with a rear naked choke. Like, you know what Kamaru Usman and Rodrigo Kazula Vargas have in common? Not very much, other than the only guy to finish them is Jose Caceres, right? So funny stat there. What I'm saying is that submission defense doesn't seem to be a problem for him. His chin, you know, I hate to be the stereotype that says it all the time, but like, cast iron Mexican chin on him. He doesn't go down quietly, right? So my problem with Rong is that even though he seems to be the more skillful guy, he is green. He still does need to bank some rounds against better competition. And I can see him easily going into a quick lead over Vargas and then eventually getting a little bit tired, maybe a little bit, you know, bewildered, a little bit caught in the moment. And if Vargas is able to complete some takedowns, especially, you saw the Brock Weaver fight. I mean, he starches him a little bit, but, you know, ground game didn't seem like it was going to be an issue until he blasted him in the face with the knee. It looks like Vargas does have some skill. If he's able to put it all out there, he'd be considered a live underdog. Now, again, I think the UFC does know what they're doing. I do think that this fight primarily stays standing, and I think that Rong is the quicker, better striker. So over the course of 3 rounds, I think he should pick up this points lead. But I wouldn't completely discredit and write Vargas out and that he couldn't take this fight to the ground and mix things up. Now, again, you don't want to pick a straight-up winner in this fight, and we're looking at some props. The props I like, first and foremost, is over 1.5 at -160. So again, if Rong's going to win this fight, it's going to be a striking battle. He's not, in my opinion, not knocking out Vargas, not submitting Vargas. He's just going to outpoint him standing. If Vargas has his way, he's able to control him, tire him out, grind on him, complete some takedowns. We're still getting overs in this, right? Over 1.5 -160, over 2.5 +130. So that's not even fight goes the distance. If one of them is able to get caught late, that's fine. The over 2.5 plus money +130. And of course, if you want to just take that fight to go the distance, it's +165. If you were that much of a wrong guy and you really thought, you know what, I like what I see of this kid, I think he's developing, I think the UFC knows exactly what they're doing, and they've tailor-made a perfect opponent for him to use some of that outside striking and kind of get the victory, then I don't like paying that -250 money line. But if I thought he was going to win, I kind of think he's going to win by decision over Vargas, who kind of just refuses to get put away quietly. So that wrong by decision is +335. And to me, that's a big enough price tag that's like, you know, worth a small little punt sprinkle.
All right, I like it. I like it. I can't wait to see this one actually play out. And one thing I did want to mention regarding this, it kind of reminds me of the Carlos Ulberg and Kennedy Nzechukwu fight, where you know that they sent Zhu Rong a list of guys, and they probably chose Rodrigo Vargas. And unfortunately for Carlos Ulberg, we saw what happened there. There is still a possibility that the setup fight could blow up in their face and we could see Rodrigo Vargas go out there and get a victory, right? And last thing, I do want to give a big shout out here to Hunter Silvers, who's shouting out Dynasty Warriors. That is a game I used to play way back in the day as well, too. And Zurong is the first thing I thought of as well. So I was very happy to actually see that pop up in the comment section here. So shout out to my guy, Hunter Silvers. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Danaa Batgerel versus Kevin Natividad. Looks like a striker versus grappler type of matchup. Obviously, Batgerel very talented in the Muay Thai and kickboxing realm. Kevin Natividad has some sneaky submissions up his sleeve, and I think his inability to get the fight to the ground is also ultimately going to cost him here. I really like Batgerel in this spot. I think he can let up Kevin Natividad on the feet. Even though we did see Haile Alateng take down Danaa Batgerel in their fight, especially in that third round where he was able to grind him out there, I think Alateng has a better wrestling game than what Kevin Natividad brings to the table. Obviously, last time we saw Natividad come to the cage, it was his UFC debut, and he gets knocked silly by Miles Johns in that third round. If you remember that knockout, one of the weirder knockouts where he did like a half backflip and almost spiked his head on the mat. But great knockout win for Miles Johns. They're not so good for Kevin Natividad, but I'm expecting to see a solid Danaa Batgerel here. I like the kid, one of the few guys, I think the only fighter of Mongolian descent to actually fight in the cage. So that's a cool little backstory to have with this guy coming into the UFC. Again, I think he's the better striker. I think Natividad is going to have his hands full on the feet. And if Natividad is successful in getting this fight to the ground, it could get a little bit interesting. And that minus 185 may not look that great, but I do think that the striking is going to start to wear on Natividad. And I think that this is a spot where we could possibly look at another round 3 finish. I know Natividad got finished in the third round last time around. I'm not as keen on it as I was like the Barrio round 3 or anything like that. But I think that this has a slight chance to finish in the third round. You got plus 1125 on Batgerel in round 3. But even if you just want to take Batgerel by KO, you're looking at plus 245, which is what I think is a very solid spot here. I'm not the highest on Natividad. I'm not sure if it's some sort of bias that I have against the guy or anything like that. But I just don't think he has the skills to truly cut it here in the UFC. And especially if you can't get past a guy like Batgerel, it's you're not really going to cut it in the UFC here. We'll give him a pass on the Miles Johns fight, as I do think that Miles Johns is a solid fighter and he does have some longevity inside the UFC. But Batgerel, I don't know. I think that this is one of the few fighters that he'll be able to beat on the roster, and he should be able to take home a TKO victory here. So again, plus 245-ish for Batgerel to win by knockout. I like it. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, okay, I agree with you. So the prop that I liked was fight doesn't go the distance at minus 115. And I think Batgerel is going to be able to take his best shots and then break him down and hopefully put him away the longer the fight goes. You mentioned he's the only Mongolian fighter on the roster. Actually, small little thing, he's on the same card with this Qileng Aori, the Mongolian murderer. So, yeah,
but he's Chinese, is he not?
Well, so that's when you get into political stuff, right? Where he is Mongolian, but is Mongolia part of China? Just depends how you classify it. But he's born in Inner Mongolia. Regardless, it's cool to see two of them on the same card. I think that's the theme here, is that the UFC is trying out some of these Asian prospects, especially from China and that region, and hoping that some of them stick. The difference here is that you've got a much more refined guy, a 31-year-old fighter who's already kind of accrued a little more experience. And I like what I see out of Batgerel. When you talk about that Haile Alateng fight in his debut, I mean, it's 1-1 going into the third, kind of a gut check performance. He comes up on the losing end of the decision. But after that, he leaves the confines of his own gym and ends up going to Greg Jackson's camp over in New Mexico. I think you've seen a lot of improvements from him since then. He's obviously strong. He's obviously got a lot of power. That's a characteristic that you see from pretty much all Mongolian fighters. Their wrestling's actually pretty good, and they're very, very strong. So I think that he's going to be able to go out there and stuff Kevin Natividad's takedowns, keep this fight standing, and just wear on him and chip away at him. Now, when you look at Kevin Natividad, so first and foremost, right, people loved him going into the Miles Johns fight, and I couldn't quite figure it out. He's a plus 110 underdog. Miles Johns, a former LFA champ. Miles Johns fought some incredible guys. Miles Johns been in the UFC. I couldn't quite figure out what people were loving about Kevin Natividad, especially considering just 2 fights ago, just like a year prior, he had gone to a split decision with Andy Perez in LFA. Andy Perez was a 7-7 opponent, right? Then the Miles Johns fight, he goes out. Like you mentioned, we like Miles Johns. It's no disrespect losing to a guy like that. But what is interesting to note is Miles Johns only knocked out 3 career opponents, and Kevin Natividad being the third one. He had not knocked out an opponent in 5 years. Pretty much Miles Johns either beats you by split decision or decision, or maybe a submission victory, but he's not really known for his punching power. So to see him melt Kevin Natividad, little bit of a question mark about his chin. Then you look at his only other pro loss, which is against Glenn Baker, currently a fighter not really doing much with his career, but he gets knocked out in that fight in 9 seconds, right? LFA 24. So again, do we have a problem with Kevin Natividad's durability? The longer the fight goes, he did tire against Miles Johns, although to his credit, he took the fight on 6 days' notice. So expected that he would tire. This spot, if he doesn't tire, he's able to push more of a pace. He's able to kind of work that grappling. It would be probably the path to victory. But I think even then, even though he's coming out of Arizona Combat Sports and he's working on his wrestling, he's not really a wrestler. I don't think that he's going to be successful in taking Batgerel down consistently, and that the more he tries to take him down, the more he'll fatigue. The later this fight goes, Batgerel just hopefully gets to him, tires him out, wears him down, is able to get that TKO. I know you love those third-round TKO props, and I thought the same thing. I was like, he's going to like these ones because that's how Batgerel would probably get the job done. Yes, Natividad has been knocked out in 9 seconds, so could also happen in the first round. One would think he tires him out a little bit first. So the two props there being the fight doesn't go the distance, plus 115, plus money, and then that Batgerel by TKO is 245. Batgerel round 2, 625. Batgerel round 3 is 1125. If that's your, if that's kind of your angle you're approaching, you take, shots like that. Those are both interesting plays. But I think the safe money would be fight doesn't go the distance and maybe just that straight up Batgerel TKO.
I like it. I do want to bring up my guy SKD here. He's saying his Batgerel jinx as the public's favorite. And I won't lie, when I originally skimmed through these odds, I was kind of surprised that Batgerel was like that sub 200 favorite that everybody seems to be on. I'm not even sure I can find many people that are actually backing Kevin Natividad in this spot. So hopefully we're not jinxing him with all the love that he's been getting. Obviously, me and you are firmly on him here too. So we'll see how that one goes. But we both like him to finish, and obviously that round 3 prop is definitely very live here. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Tristan Connelly versus Pat Sabatini. You are infamous for being one of the few guys that actually took Tristan Connelly in his UFC debut on short notice against Michel Pereira. Especially, with Michel Pereira fighting the dumbass way that he did that night, it allowed Tristan Connelly to get the victory a little bit easier. Now, the one thing that I found interesting about Connelly's career over his regional scene is this guy's fought from 145 all the way up to 185. Like, he doesn't give a fuck about weight classes, it seems like, right? This guy seems like a money weight kind of guy where it's like, wherever the money is, I'll fucking go there. I don't give a shit. And the 2 fights he had at 145 on the regional scene, he ended up losing. One of those being to Mario Pereira, who I know you know very well. Oh, yeah. Kind of surprised. I was wondering, actually, if you could shed some quick light here. Where the fuck is Mario Pereira? He hasn't fought since that fight. The guy seemed like he had a really big spotlight and a huge steam behind him. Can you just give me a quick update regarding Mario, where he's at?
Yeah, I mean, he was trained by Richard Ho at that H2O MMA. He was a training partner of Ole Obe Mercier. And yes, guy was a living for this kid. He was dusting people. He lost to Jeremy Kennedy, who went on to do great things, fought in the UFC, he's currently in Bellator, and he beat Tristan Connelly. And then that was it. I mean, I just don't think the money is there for a lot of these guys, so they quickly vanish away. A great example of a similar to one of this is your boy, Neelan Hordat Reese, who fought, in a lot of people's, myself included, opinion, got robbed against Kyle Nelson.
Yep. And
Kyle Nelson goes on to fight in the UFC and make it and fight internationally, get a little bit of credit. I think he won a little bit of bonus money for his win over Polo Reyes, like has a little highlight reel that he can put together, has lost against a good level of competition. And Neelan, who beat him, he did, in my opinion, straight up, he beat him, just like vanished, never fought again. It's tough. It's a tough proposition to be. I remember when I brought in Kyle Nelson to fight Ainsley Robinson. Ainsley Robinson wrestled for Canada at the Olympics, right? He's a hell of a wrestler. He's a great athlete. He's at the time he was like a BJJ brown belt or purple belt, but you knew he was just going to take you down and grind you. Like, that's a tough proposition for a young fighter to take a fight like that. And paid him $1,000. It was just show money. There's no win money. $1,000. Like, how do you convince somebody to do something like that? You'd have to really want to do it. So problem is, guy, he'll have a family, or he'll have an education, or he'll have a fallback plan. You get a couple injuries, and then it makes you just realize I don't know, man. Yeah, maybe it's just not worth it. So I just, everyone's got a different path in life. I've always said it's not necessarily the best guy, because you've trained in gyms, right? In fact, you manage a gym. You manage a huge gym. Think about how many guys walked in where you're like, damn, dude, this guy's got the goods.
Me, man.
And then they just fall off the map, like Michael Karkula. And it's just these guys could go very, very far, but they don't got the attitude. Then you see a guy walk in, Sergey Yuskevich, right? Yeah. And just maybe lacking some skill. And it's just junkyard dog. Wants it more than he wants to breathe. Will jump on a limb if he has to take it home. And it's like these guys end up going a lot farther, right? So again, I always say it's not the most talented guy, it's who sticks around the longest, like who's there at the end of the day. Tristan Connelly pretty much embodies that, right? So look at a guy that actually starts his career off. He's 3-4 to start his pro career, losing to Miles Mariola and Matt Trudeau and Dan Ring, Nick Ring's brother. You know what I mean? Like bad start, dude. Bad start. 4-3, but it's like he doesn't care. Fight anybody. Fight all the time. Loses to Mario Pereira,
especially at all these different weight classes, right? Like you're saying, like even the Mario Pereira one, when I saw that on his record, and again, the thing that stood out to me was that was at 145, and he's win this at 145 now. So I'm surprised that he's coming down to this weight class here in the UFC, especially against a hot prospect like Sabatini, right? Sabatini is a guy, very strong wrestler, former CFFC champion. Obviously, he was supposed to fight Rafael Alves a couple weeks ago before Alves ate himself before stepping on the scales. But I think that this is a great fight for Sabatini. I think he can go out there and just absolutely grind on Connelly. I think he's going to be have the 5-year youth advantage. He's going to have in my opinion, I think he's going to have the jiu-jitsu advantage. I think this is going to be a high action, high offensive fight. And that could actually help the under 2.5 here. Like if you want to talk about statistically how it's played out, 5 out of the 20 fights that Tristan Connelly have gone to a decision. 4, I believe, out of the 16 fights in Sabatini's career have gone to a decision. So they have a pretty high hit rate in terms of either getting finished or finding the finish themselves. Tristan Connelly's been finished twice in his 5 losses. And then Sabatini, on the other hand, is still a guy that goes out there and looks for these finishes more often than not. So I do like Sabatini in this spot. The price has been absolutely stomped to death. Shout out to my guy Nick West who said that as well. The opener was crazy, right? You got plus 105 on fucking on Sabatini, and then everybody just rushes in and get that. You know, shout out to the $100 bettors out there. But you know, you're getting that crazy line. But now he's at the line that a lot of people were expecting him to be at, right? Minus 220 sounds about right. Minus 200 sounds about right here. And it's just going to be being slightly a step ahead, which I think ultimately is going to be the downfall here for Tristan Connelly. So I'm a slight proponent of the under 2.5, which is at plus 175. Again, I love me some violence. I just feel like these guys match up very well. More often than not, when you get guys like this, it turns into a striking match. But even with that said, I think that we are going to get some good grappling exchanges out of here. And I think that we'll see Sabatini actually come out with a submission here. Plus 340 is a very solid line to take a shot on him to win by submission, as I believe that he's going to be the better guy here. Am I wrong? Talk me down.
No, I think you're right, man. And again, this is coming from the guy that had Tristan Connelly his last time out. But again, it's all about right place, right time. So when you look at Tristan Connelly, this is the cool thing about him, right? So after he lost to Mario Pereira, we'll start from there. He beats Ashman Shregi, and then 5 weeks later, he beat Adam Asenza. Very quick turnaround. It's something like 4 months later, he fights his next fight. And then it's like, again, it's like a 6-week turnaround to him beating Lenny Wheeler. Then after Lenny Wheeler, this is his last career loss to Shane Campbell. He fought him literally 4 weeks later. He's a guy that, because we talked about it, loves to fight, gives no fucks, guy that's going to improve. He's just going out there and doing it over and over. So when you look at his run leading up to the UFC, he beats Tyrone Henderson, right? But then beats Jack Jusola. 2 months later, Dewan Owens. 2 months later, UFC debut against Mario Pereira. No doubt in my mind, he was in great shape. He had literally fought twice in the prior 4 months. He's a guy that normally he strives on these 5-6 week turnarounds. He's in great shape. He's fighting all the time. And he's used to fighting for basically free. So making a UFC debut, 12 grand just to show up, perfect. It's like, man, he's got great cardio. He's a BJJ black belt, and he's very durable. When you look at how he's losing, Shane Campbell caught him in a knee bar. That's a bit of a head scratcher considering Shane Campbell's Muay Thai background. But Campbell can grapple. It's just a bit of a head scratcher considering most people didn't see that one coming. But then Mario Pereira, Miles Mariola, he had a shoulder injury, Dan Ring. All those fights are all decision, right? Knocking out Tristan Connelly, good luck. Pereira threw a flying knee at his head, just about grazed him. But it's like his chin's good. His submission defense, he's a BJJ black belt. He has a gym in Vancouver. He trains people under him. Like grappling's pretty solid. He's a durable guy. So you would think when he took that fight his last time out against Michel Pereira, it was all about just survive the first round. This guy's going to tire. He always does. He actually missed weight, which I didn't know at the time when I made the bet, but he ended up missing weight. So you knew Pereira had a bad weight cut. It all was just like writing on the wall. And then he goes out there, survives the first round like he needs to do, and then just grinds him into the ground. That's not on the table now with Pat Sabatini, because now instead of having these quick little 2-month turnarounds that he's been having, he comes to this fight with like a 16th month layoff. So that's something that he's not usually generally dealing with. The other thing too, he comes into this fight, he's 35 years old. So for as much as he's seemingly a prospect, he's 1-0 in the UFC with a huge upset. He's actually theoretically at the tail end of the run. As well, he's coming off massive neck surgery where he had to have like a disc in his neck fused. It's a huge injury to come back from. We don't know if that Rolls Royce engine's still there. We don't know if he's going to have 3-round cardio for all day like he generally does. We don't know if he's going to be a little bit rusty in the stand-up department. We don't know if he's been training at the same optimal level. He has been at Extreme Couture the last month. He does appear to be in good shape, but it's a lot of question marks for an older fighter to be coming back to. And then you talk about him dropping down from 170, not to 155, but all the way down to 145, a weight class he hasn't made in 6 years, and a weight class he lost last time he competed at. It's all just like enough that you like wouldn't really want to get behind it. So I agree. I think Pat Sabatini should be the rightful victor. The best line that I liked on this fight was just the fight goes the distance at -175. So Sabatini loves to grapple as well. I mean, he's got a really good submission game. I don't think he submits Tristan Connelly. Again, they're both black belts. They're both good grapplers. They both have good gas tanks. Sabatini is a CFFC champion. Their champions only fight 4 rounds. If it's 2-2 after 4, then you get that 5th round. In his fights that went that long, he was up, so he can fight 20 minutes. We know that. So cardio doesn't seem to be an issue for him as well. Connelly's never had cardio issues. It just seems like both these guys are going to go out there, have a very fun fight. They're going to try to both break each other. I just don't know that either man is successful in breaking the other in a 15-minute time span. So I got fight goes the distance at -175. The official pick would be Pat Sabatini by decision. But I mean, you can't discredit Connelly. Oh, and the last thing is like when I met Connelly and I want to be like, I want to thank this guy. This is the biggest single bet money line that I've ever hit, right? Confidently, like not just like put a little punt, like, back it felt good. People reaching out being like, that one felt good, right? When I talked to him about it, he's like, man, you think that felt good? He's like, he's fought his entire career for very, very few dollars, right?
Oh yeah.
So he wins his UFC debut. He gets his 12,000. They give him an additional 12,000 because he won it. He gets $3,000 from Reebok. It's $25,000. The fight is awarded fight of the night, so he gets $50,000. And then because Pereira missed decision, or because his opponent missed the decision, he gets his 50 G's too. So he ends up making $125,000. And he's like, this is life changing. And then life changing, he hasn't fought since. Now he's running his gym. Now he got the neck surgery. Now he's had a little bit of money in his savings account. Now he's investing a little bit. Like that's so that changes you a little bit as well, right? Now you're coming back. Now you got to get back to junkyard dog mode, but you're 35 years old and you got a fused neck. Like as the time passed him by, like Sabatini wants it, man. Pat Sabatini wants it bad. I know they all want it. I guess that's a bad way to put it, right? Like who's competing here that doesn't want it? But I just feel like this young, hungry aggressor is going to be a little bit more than a veteran who's kind of, going to take his time and have a feel out round. Like it's better to fight the guys like Court McGee who are like, they'll give you a round to like figure it out before they bring it on. Like it gives you time to get your feet set. Like these young guys like Sabatini, they're making their debut. They're young, they're hungry, they're aggressive. Training partner with Sean Brady out in Pennsylvania at Renzo Gracie's camp out there. Like what's there not to like about this guy, right? He's going to come at you. And I feel like he'll probably get him in the long run. So 15-minute decision for Sabatini.
All right, I like it. Let's move on to the next one here. And I'm going to tee this one up to you, and then I got to hop off for a quick second to take care of something. But Brendan Allen versus Karl Roberson, great fight, -155 on Allen, +135-ish on Karl Roberson. Obviously, the scales is going to be a little bit of a challenge for Roberson here as he's missed weight a couple times now. So that's one thing that we're really going to have to see. But I'll let you lead this one off, and I'll hop right back on. So how do you feel about Brendan Allen against Karl Roberson here, buddy?
Well, yeah, I guess it just kind of depends about like the Brendan Allen that shows up. If he's able to get the fight to the ground consistently, he's going to be a threat. We all know with Karl Roberson, as much as he is a accredited kickboxer, you probably don't want to stand this guy for a prolonged period of time. He'll chip away at you and hurt you. His takedown defense seems to leave something to be desired, and his grappling has just been so far no good. I mean, he's got 3 professional losses. He's been submitted all three times in the first round. Now, we will be able to give the guy a bit of a pass in saying that level of competition has to be considered for something. And he has been fighting decent guys, right? When you look at the losses, is losing a fight to Marvin Vettori a deal breaker? No. Marvin Vettori, top 5 guy in the world. A loss to him, it's not a setback. It's all good. It's a learning experience. A loss to Glover Teixeira, is that an issue? No, not an issue. Glover Teixeira, absolutely the man. Fighting for a UFC title coming up. Fought John Jones to a 5-round decision back in the day. Been here, done that. Great wrestling, great grappling. What's there not to like about Glover Teixeira? It's like, okay, Cesar Mutante, BJJ black belt. That's how he was fighting. Get these fights to the ground, rest you to the ground, get that submission. So with Karl Roberson, even though the blueprint has been made, even though we do know how to defeat this man, the best path to victory against him, it's like it does still take an elite level fighter in order to do that. Brendan Allen seems to have the goods. It's that, again, at 25 years old, he seems to just like be a little, I don't know if it's nervousness. I don't know if it's like a bit of anxiety, but he goes out there and he wants to get the fight finished as quick as possible. And the longer these fights have been playing out, the more you start to see him kind of run into some issues. So when he's at his best, I mean, no doubt about it, the guy can put it all together. But what's important to note is both of his losses in LFA before he came to the UFC against Eric Anders and Anthony Hernandez were both 5-round fights, right? They're both 5-round fights for the title, but they're fights that the longer the fight goes, this guy is getting taken down, he is getting controlled, he is getting tired. So that's no problem. He's fighting 3 rounds in the UFC. Cardio shouldn't be an issue, right? But again, the fight with Aaron Jeffrey on Contender Series, quick first-round finish, gets Jeffries out as quick as he can. The Kevin Holland fight, he's lucky he got that fight finished in the second because he was rapidly getting tired. I guess so was Kevin Holland, but I mean, it was a good thing he finished it when he did. The Tom Breeze fight, first-round finish, right? You don't get to see it. The Kyle Daukaus fight, man, outside that first round, he looks mint, crisp, wrestling on point, grappling on point, doing a very excellent job. The longer the fight starts to progress, Kyle Daukaus, who's a big underdog, coming in on relatively short notice and is completely unheralded. We know now that he's good. But the longer the fight goes, that's where you see Brendan Allen start to get into issues again. So, you know, going into the Sean Strickland fight, I know Locke was on the same page as me. You like Sean Strickland because he spent so much time working on that takedown defense. He's a long-rangey striker. He's feeling himself. He's back from the motorcycle accident, but he just got a good 3 rounds in against John Phillips, Jack Marshman, where he was just, you know, feeling good, feeling confident, feeling cocky again, getting that swagger back to him. And he goes out there and knocks out Brendan Allen. But it's the same thing with Allen. He's either trying to get this thing done early, or the longer you can extend him, he starts to have issues. So I guess that's just the $1 million question here. I think he's going to have a lot of success going out there using his wrestling and grinding up against Karl Roberson. Karl Roberson, again, we know that the blueprint's there. Get the takedowns, out-grapple this guy. He should be able to do exactly that. But if he doesn't get that first-round finish, if he doesn't get this finish in a round and a half, you know, and especially, you know, he's at Sanford MMA now. And when you look at that Sean Strickland fight, he thinks he's a striker. You know, he wants to strike. He wants to test out his newfound striking. And it's a bad game plan, which results in him getting knocked out. If he comes in here against Karl Roberson and he wants to strike, he wants to show off this new flashy striking and all this work he's been doing at Sanford MMA, and he takes that striking approach, that's allowing Karl Roberson to have his best success. But if you go out there with just the grapple, take this guy down, search for the submission, again, that's the blueprint that's already been written for us. So I would have to say that Brendan Allen should be able to follow it, should be able to get this fight to the ground, should be able to look for those grappling exchanges, and hopefully get a submission. And so if you want to look at it from the prop standpoint of that happening, the under 2.5 minus 160, like it. Brendan Allen, win or lose, is aiming for these under 2.5s. Either he's going to get you to the ground, he's going to put a beat on you, maybe finds that submission, or at least put you in a compromising position and forces a TKO. If he doesn't, he is going to burn himself out trying to do that and then leave himself vulnerable in the latter half of the fight. So that under 2.5 at minus 160, not bad. The Allen by submission is plus 175. I did look very briefly at the Allen by TKO. It's like plus 850 or something crazy.
Yeah.
And he does show a lot of submissions. And I mean, when you look at Karl Roberson, 3 losses, never been knocked out, been submitted 3 times. So why would this be the first guy to knock him out? But it's more than that. It's that if Allen can't get the submission on the ground, but he can mount him, or he can flatten him out, take his back and flatten him out, or he can trap an arm, or he can just keep punching away and force the ref to come in here and stop the fight, then it would be a TKO, right? But you could also see Karl Roberson taking a few and giving up the submission. So regardless, you would probably just look to that Allen inside the distance, if anything. And the way the fight, the prop I feel most confident about is just that under 2.5 minus 160.
I think it's a good point that you brought up regarding the TKOs, especially with fighters that are able to be so dominant on the ground, right? The example that truly comes to mind for me is Ovin St. Preux against Alonzo Benefield. And even though he knocked him out on the feet there, a lot of people are just like, take the sub prop, right? He's not going to knock out Alonzo Benefield. And I think the KO prop was like plus 600, plus 700. And my reasoning behind that was what you just said about Brendan Allen. Like, what if he takes him down, dominates him on the ground? The submission doesn't show itself, but it just goes out there and TKOs him. So at plus 825, which is what I saw the line at, I think it's worth a little bit of a dabble. But I'm actually seeing it the other way. I do agree with you. The under 2.5, that's probably the way to go here, as we'll probably get a finish. -160, slightly chalky, but I think both guys have high upside for getting a finish here. I think it's Roberson that actually ends up knocking him out. Now, Brendan Allen, 37% takedown accuracy rate. The only guy he's successfully taken down in the UFC, Kevin Holland, who just has dog shit takedown defense to begin with. Now, Karl Roberson, obviously 50% takedown defense rate himself, so he doesn't have the greatest takedown defense, let alone. But I think a lot of people have this bad taste in their mouth about Karl Roberson, considering all the debacle and shenanigans that he had to deal with Marvin Vettori, right? The whole viral video that went out there that just put him in a bad light, made him seem like he was a scared little bitch and stuff like that. Everybody just started shitting on Karl Roberson. Everybody was on Marvin Vettori's side. And then he goes in there into the cage with Marvin Vettori and then gets smashed the way that he did. So a lot of these people are just like, why are we backing Karl Roberson anymore? But this is a guy, only a couple fights ago that was -115 going into a fight with Glover Teixeira, right? Like that, we do have this perception of Karl Roberson, and we do have this affirmation that he can be a solid fighter if he can stuff a couple takedowns here from Brendan Allen, who I don't think is a great wrestler. Keep this on the feet and get to work with the leg kicks and eventually try to knock him out. And that's kind of the approach that I'm taking here. So I see that you're on Allen, that you think he gets him to the ground and probably submits him or it finishes him that way. I'm going to go the opposite side. I think Roberson manages to keep this fight on the feet, and +335 for Roberson by KO. Ooh, that looks nice to me. Go ahead. You had something you want to say.
Yeah, so the last thing is that you're probably just going to want to wait for the weigh-ins as well, because the problem a lot of people are mad at him is that the first Vettori fight is canceled due to COVID. So, like, the whole event scrapped, not his problem, right? The second time, it's fight week, and he pulls out with illness. Now, a lot of the time that happens, it's bad weight cut, right? You're having a bad weight cut. You're coming down to 185 pounds. Something goes wrong during fight week. You get sick. Now he physically makes the fight with Vettori. He comes in at 190 pounds. Yeah. Right? So misses weight by 4 pounds, looks shit, goes out there, losing to Vettori. No big deal, kid. No big deal.
Cusp of a title shot right now.
Yeah, getting submitted in the first round by Marvin Vettori, a little bit different, right? People don't usually go down that road. But at the same time, it's a high-level opponent. I'm saying it's bad weight cut again. Now, when you consider this is a guy that fought Glover Teixeira just a couple of years ago, he's a 205er, And I would say that Karl Roberson made his kickboxing debut, pro kickboxing debut, in France against Jerome Lebanner. Like nuts. That's at heavyweight. He kickboxed in Glory as a light heavyweight. He made his UFC debut, light heavyweight. Fights Glover Teixeira, a top 5 guy, currently now fighting for a title, at light heavyweight. Now that he's come down to 185, the weight cuts haven't been kind to him. His cardio doesn't look great. His takedown defense is suspect. One's got to wonder if it's bad weight cut stuff. And now, Vettori, you got to be mad. Man, this guy talked a lot of shit. He said all these things. I got sick on the basis of a bad weight cut. Follows it up with a second bad weight cut. And now I'm to believe that he's going to come into this fight versus Brandon Allen good to go. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. So I hear what you're saying. Yeah. But if you're going to pull the trigger, at least wait to weigh-ins. You just don't know. Sure. You don't want to lock it in and then get stuck, right?
Exactly.
And the line's not going to waver a whole lot until weigh-ins.
I think that it's funny because the line is starting to move towards Allen's way. So, like, either way, the best thing is to wait for the weigh-ins, and at the same time, you're probably going to get a better line on Karl Roberson the longer that you wait. So, yeah, absolutely great point from you there about the weigh-in for Karl Roberson. Let's see how it plays out for him. Hopefully, he comes in on weight. Hopefully, he looks good, and I think he's probably one of the better dog spots on this card. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Dwight Grant going up against Stefan Sekulic. You want to talk about inactivity? These guys are like the epitome of inactivity in the UFC at this point. You got Stefan Sekulic coming off of a 2.5-year-long layoff after he made his UFC debut against Ramazan Emeev, came up short in that fight, as a lot of people do, especially going up against a guy like Emeev. And then Dwight Grant last time around gave us a great one-round fight against Daniel Rodriguez, where he initially rocked and hurt Daniel Rodriguez, and our guy Chris Tyone's like, he's not dead yet. Let's keep going. Daniel Rodriguez comes back into the game and eventually finishes Dwight Grant himself, but amazing performance there. But I think you have to go back to like UFC 237 or 236 to see the last time that Dwight Grant fought against Alan Jouban in a very lackluster fight there. But I have so many question marks about Dwight Grant, right? Like, if he goes out there and fights, his volume isn't the greatest. His power is amazing, which is what he usually tries to rely on and tries to get his guys out of there by knocking them out. But like, he's super low volume, and a guy like Stefan Sekulic could absolutely upset him here just off of volume alone. Like, I think he could just like stay active enough. If he stays away from the big strikes, he could possibly pull off a decision victory of his own here. But I think that power, that explosiveness, and that speed of Dwight Grant is going to be a little bit too much for Sekulic here. And I think he ends up finding that knockout. Sekulic is also coming off a USADA suspension, if I'm not mistaken. And the last guy to come off a USADA suspension that we just saw on the cage, Mr. Chase Sherman, you saw a clear difference between what he looked in at weigh-ins against like Villanueva and what he looked in this past weekend against Andrei Arlovski. So yeah, guys coming off that USADA suspension probably aren't doing the greatest here. But again, stylistically, this is a fight that Stefan can win if he's able to stay away from the big bombs of Dwight and just outpoint him. But I do think that at one point within those 15 minutes, we see Dwight Grant actually land one of those big bombs. Now, in terms of a prop, obviously, I'd be looking to back Grant to win by knockout here. And that line is currently sitting at Dwight Grant by knockout plus 120. You know, I'd want a little bit more meat on the bone there, considering I'm not a big Dwight Grant fan myself. And it seems like the public is pretty privy on my approach here, right? You got Dwight Grant opening at minus 270, now down to minus 220, because people are starting to see the same things that I just laid out for you guys. Another spot you can look at is the under 2.5 at minus 130. But I think if a finish transpires here, it's actually going to be Grant and not Sekulic. I'm not completely sold on the knockout power of Sekulic at this point. So I'm going with Grant, knockout plus 120. Again, not as nice as I'd like it to be. If we want to go with early, Grant plus 250, I think that's a solid spot. Or even Grant in round 2 plus 475 is not too bad of a spot. But I'm going to say KO plus 120. How about you?
Yeah, I almost feel like it's this week's Razak Al-Hassan. He's a very talented fighter that is low output, but has a tremendous amount of power. Is a little bit older, but if he touches you, he puts you down. And in his case, you know, the win over Nico Price for Al-Hassan, like puts him on the map. Is like, this guy is a legitimate power puncher. With Dwight Grant, maybe he doesn't quite have that, but even just a split decision loss to Alan Jouban, having Jouban respect that much power that you have coming your way. But the fight with Daniel Rodriguez, man, he is a bad referee away from winning that fight. You know, he is a hair away from winning that fight. He is, and look how good Daniel Rodriguez is kind of progressing and getting better, and you know, kind of fighting a decent little footing in the UFC for himself. He's a very entertaining and talented fighter. I think that Dwight Grant has skill. It's that he's 36 years old. He was a guy that was training out of American Kickboxing Academy for the longest time, and just you don't really necessarily see a ton of improvements out of him fight to fight. Got that power. I think he's got something like a 76-inch reach, long reach. You know, if he touches you up, you're going to have a problem. But it's just too low output. For this camp, he's currently at Alliance MMA. Does that change anything? Does that make him that much of a better fighter this late in his career? Like, I'm not necessarily sure. If he went in with the game plan of let his hands go and actually throw some more volume, I don't think he's got the cardio. You know, you look back at the Zach Otto fight where nothing happens.
Yeah.
But beyond nothing happening, it's just like he gets taken down by Zach Otto and he tires out. Just hasn't got the go. So I find it hard to jump behind Dwight Grant again at this stage of his career. He comes in here usually as like a sizable enough favorite, and you can't necessarily trust him. So when you look back, you know, we talked about Al-Hassan last week because, I mean, as much as we talked about red flags for the entire time, and as much as we were like, bad idea, and this guy fooled me 3 times, you know, 3 times as the favorite, still, it would like he ended up being the pick because it's like as much as I still probably won't happen. But it was a lot of that for me was, yeah, at least in that Manir Aziz fight, he threw his hands in the first round. He hurt him in the first round. You know, he did let his hands go. And if he does that in this fight against Jacob Malkoun, then he probably does get that finish. It just doesn't not necessarily the way things play out. When I think about Dwight Grant, I think about the same thing. He almost did knock out Daniel Rodriguez last time out. If he lets his hands go in this spot as well, he probably knocks out Stefan Sekulic inside of the first round or before he gets tired. It's a non-issue. But it goes back to that bad gut feeling that's like Sekulic is going to try to do to him what Ramazan Amin did to him, you know, just like grind this guy, get him up against the cage, you know, like as much as you can just try to outwork him, avoid the power, outwork him, that would be the key to victory. When you look at Sekulic's record, it's not rich with name brand opponents. It's not rich with, you know, the highest level of guys. However, losses to David Zawada, who's in the UFC currently, that's the last guy to knock him out, and that fight's 6 years ago. So okay, not terrible. He's lost to Adriano Balbi. Balbi's decent. Balbi's not bad, but also it's like a leg injury in the 3rd round. So not finished clean at the very least. And then the Ramazan Ameev fight. I mean, pretty difficult task to make your debut against a guy with the style of Ameev. Win or lose, you don't look good against Ramazan Ameev. It's a tough fight for him. But again, I mean, he gets 3 rounds under his belt. He gets to make his UFC debut. He gets to make that walk. He gets to feel the octagon jitters. He gets to experience the weight cut and the weigh-ins and all these different things. That's all good for a young fighter. So getting that out of the way, could he come out here and give a better version of himself? Yeah, still only 29 years old. Maybe there's something there. it just seems like he's got the makings of a live underdog. But similar to last week, I just don't know that I'm got the cojones to pull the trigger on that live underdog. So I went with instead fight goes the distance at plus 130. I know it goes kind of against what you were mentioning with Dwight Grant. Dwight Grant probably does clip him and knock him out. I just got a feeling that Dwight Grant's going to try to conserve his energy. He's going to try to play the long game. Sekulic is going to try to grind him up against the cage and try to tire him down over time. But we'll probably get some rounds banked up in this one. So for plus money, that would be the best angle I had looking at it. I also saw that Grant by decision was plus 315. But again, do I want to go down that rabbit hole? 13 fights on this card, outside of the 3 Chinese prospects kicking off the card. If I'm looking to pass on a few of these, Sekulic, this spot, Sekulic versus Grant, is probably a spot that I'm looking to fade, if anything.
There's a lot of times where you see guys plant themselves in a new camp, and that camp tries to change the style of that fighter. The one that comes to mind most recently is Derek Minner going over there to Glory MMA and Fitness, and he wins a fucking decision victory in who knows how long, right? Nobody ever expected that to happen. So maybe that's something that we see here from Dwight Grant, which is, like you're saying, play that long game, play the smart game, conserve your energy, let your power go in spurts, and try to get a judge's decision victory here. So yeah, I absolutely see that point in time. I do want to give a quick shout out to my guy Nick West here, 200 watching and only 60 likes. Y'all must have forgot. Absolutely. So please do hit that like and support your boys. We do appreciate it. All right, let's get to the prelim headliner here. We got a fight that was booked a couple months ago, I believe, between Randy Brown and Alex Cowboy Oliveira. Every time I talk about Cowboy Oliveira, I'll always have to bring up the fact that this guy is the wild card in MMA. This guy, you don't know what you're going to get from him. You can't lay your money down and be like, this guy is the lock of the night play, because you just don't know what the fuck you're going to get from him. There's instances where you'll get the Peter Sabata performance, which is a picturesque performance, pretty much just annihilating Peter Sabata from the outside, digging to the body a lot, kicks up the middle, solid strikes from distance, and his cardio looked great. But in most fights when he's losing, you see his cardio start to take a fall off a cliff. You see, his striking is just not getting going. His opponents are able to control where the fight is going, and he kind of just plays along with them. Doesn't really set the tone himself. But then again, there's fights like the Max Griffin fight. There's fights like the Peter Sabata fight, like I'm talking about. He has these moments of solid skills and where he looks like a top 10 welterweight. But then there's instances when he just doesn't. And I feel like if he isn't this weekend, Randy Brown is a guy that can go out there and completely expose him. You know, Randy Brown is a guy that we've almost seen grow up in the UFC since he made his debut back in 2015. And he's fought a hell of a lot of different types of competition. Whoever allowed him to sign on the dotted line to fight Vicente Luque last time around should be absolutely fired. That was not a matchup for him to take at that point in his career. He was building a little bit of momentum, and he finally got a little bit of a winning streak after he had gotten knocked out by Nico Price in that crazy fashion that he got knocked out in. You don't feed him Vicente Luque like right away. Let's get him out there and smooth him out. Like this Cowboy fight probably would have been a great fight for him to take after or right before that Vicente Luque fight. Like that was a proper step up in progression for him. But Vicente Luque went out there and just put on an absolute veteran's lesson on him, beat him from pillar to post, eventually finishing him in that second round. I feel like Randy Brown might be the better fighter at distance here. He's obviously going to have about a 4-inch height advantage. I believe a couple inches on the reach as well. He looks good with the striking. He looks slightly more technical than Cowboy Oliveira. Oliveira is a little bit wild at times. I think Oliveira has a better jiu-jitsu game, even though we've seen Randy Brown go out there and submit Warlley Alves a couple fights ago. That was with Warlley Alves completely gassed, completely dying by that second round, and he pretty much rolled over and gave up that triangle choke. I do lean Brown here, though. I think he has the better cardio, especially when the fight is going his way. I don't think this one will be going much in Oliveira's way, but I do like Randy Brown here. Very little confidence, though, again, because Oliveira could absolutely surprise us with a great performance, and he could come out here and absolutely starch the kid in Randy Brown. So ultimately, I will go with Randy Brown. I'm going to take him to win by decision, and that line is currently on, I believe it's at plus money right now. Randy Brown by decision is plus 225, and I don't mind that. Even if we want to go with the overs here, right? I think this is a fight that could go over for sure. Over 1.5 minus 225, over 2.5 minus 125. Fight starts round 3 even is minus 150. I think that's a solid spot. Are you seeing it the way that I'm seeing? Am I giving Randy Brown too much credence here? How do you feel about it?
No, I don't think you're giving him enough. I think he's got a chance to go out there and possibly get the finish, actually. I think with Randy Brown, listen, Randy Brown's been making a ton of improvements. I think you mentioned it best yourself. We've seen him quite literally grow in the UFC. He comes in against Matt Dwyer, Canada's own from BC, and is like slight favorite. You lose to Michael Graves, from the Ultimate Fighter status. But it's that Eric Montano fight. He loses the first 2 rounds against Augusto Montano's brother. Loses the first 2 rounds. Guillotines him in the third. He was a 5-1 favorite. It was like, this guy is a mega bust. But again, he's one of these hardworking guys. We talked about Molina earlier in the show. If you're going to attend the practices, if you're going to work, with the best guys in the world day in and day out and put in the effort, you're going to make improvements. And man, he made the improvements. His losses are to Bilal Muhammad, Nico Price, Vicente Luque. Okay, well, they're all top 20 guys. Vicente Luque is a top 5 guy. Nico Price is a fringe 15 guy, or is a fringe 20 guy. Bilal Muhammad's probably a top 15 guy. So as far as losses go, Randy Brown's at least testing himself against some of the best guys out there. The wins, you might think a little bit lackluster, but it's where you see the work in progress, the development in progress. Like, he looked lackluster against Mickey Gall, right? But in the third round, it's 1-1. Third round, who wants this fight more? Gut check performance for both guys. Which young fighter is going to take a step forward in their career? It's Randy Brown. It's Randy Brown with the gas tank. It's Randy Brown with the will. It's Randy Brown with the desire, right? The Nico Price fight, crazy position to get knocked out from, but he does score the takedown over Nico Price. Fine and good. It's knocking out Brian Barberena, putting the pressure on him. And see, this is where Randy Brown's figuring out his length. He's 6'3". He's got a massive reach on him, right? He stays to the outside and uses that jab. He'll bust you up. He has decent power in his hands, but he eventually just hits you, hurts you. When you get hurt, you start to get fatigued. When you get fatigued, you make mistakes. When you make mistakes, Randy Brown capitalizes. Knocking out Brian Barberena ain't no easy task. Lesser men have failed to do it, right? Better men have failed to do it. He's been in there with a lot of tough guys. If anything, he's a durable guy. So the knockout win, it was like, okay, cool, he's going the right direction. The Warlley Alves fight, he submits Warlley Alves. What? Now, you did mention it. Bit of a weird submission considering he just tired Warlley Alves out. Yeah. And then, fatigue makes a coward out of all of us. Similar to we've seen the great Rodolfo Vieira get submitted by Anthony Hernandez. He's tired. But it actually goes back to what I'm saying is that, like, he's breaking these guys down. He can use his striking. He can chip away at you. He can tire you out. As much as I love talking shit about Warlley Alves and writing him off, hey, dude actually went out there and beat Manul Aziz. He shows that he is dangerous. He's got a submission win over Colby Covington. He fought Kamaru Usman to a decision. Was not competitive, but still, he's been there, done that. So he's not an easy opponent. You see Randy Brown heading in the right direction, and then his manager gets way too greedy and accepts a fight with Vicente Luque because it was slightly better money than a different fight. Like, come on, man. Like, not a good point for him to take a fight like that in his career, but he does. Comes out on the wrong end of it, gets a couple rounds in, experiences it. It's still an experience. He's still only 30, he's not shop worn. A knockout loss like that isn't going to take that much out of him, but it's up for him to just get motivated by that, get back in the gym. Randy Brown's never lost 2 in a row for a reason, because he gets back in there, he's motivated. Whereas Cowboy Oliveira, we didn't watch him grow in the UFC. He came to the UFC. He was pretty dope right off the get-go. He's up 2 rounds against Gilbert Burns in his debut. And got armbarred in the third. But it was just like, dope, man. This guy's intriguing. He's a huge lightweight. But somewhere around the line, couldn't really make the weight anymore. Moves up to 170. And then somewhere down the line, the performances are just not as good as they used to be. Now, mind you, he's another guy that ends up fighting the best guys in the world. But Gunnar Nelson just blows through him. The Mike Perry fight. Mike Perry's a street fighter from Michigan, man. Come on. Michigan or Florida, whatever you want to consider him from, right? Flint, Michigan, and like Clearwater Springs, Florida, or whatever, right? Like, anyways, it doesn't matter. Mike Perry is who he is, but him losing that fight was like, shit. I gave Felder a pass because Felder's a lightweight who took the fight on really short notice, but losing to Mike Perry is a bad signal for you in your career, right? And I think it was him not being motivated. Guy's 9 kids, 7 different baby mamas. He's getting older. The weight cuts aren't quite going as good as they used to. Like, there's a lot that you can kind of not love about him, right? The loss to Nicholas Dalby outweighed, right? Now, Max Griffin, I didn't think he won that fight. He wins a split, but it's a really close fight. Very close fight. Could have gone either way. Griffin just waited too long to kind of get that grappling going and tire him out a little bit. Peter Sabota fight, it's Peter Sabota, so you take the win, but not the highest quality at this stage in the game. And then that Shavkat Rakhmonov, that's a favorite that didn't end up being the mush of the week. Everybody liked Rakhmonov. Yeah. Everybody liked him. Everybody had the same narrative. Cowboy Oliveira seems half checked out. He shows up to that fight, he gets submitted in the first round. And that's why I'm liking this Randy Brown by submission prop. I think Cowboy Oliveira's always had bad cardio. I think the later these fights goes, it's not that he's not BJJ black belt. It's not that his grappling's not good. It's that the longer these fights go, he definitely gets tired. And when he gets tired, he starts to make mistakes. It's similar to Warlley Alves. You can have great grappling, but once you get tired, you're giving it up. And Randy Brown just seems to break these guys down, hurt these guys, use that length, use that reach, get the takedown, wear on you, pressure you, and then that should open up the submission. So looking at props again, this would be more of a punt play because it's big line, right? It's plus 550 Randy Brown by submission.
Wow.
You know, he has submitted a guy like Alves. He does have decent grappling. He's worked a lot on his grappling day in and day out, and as far as camp goes. So that is a path for him, right? And with Cowboy Oliveira, he just got submitted by a debuting UFC fighter. He's 33. His best days are behind him. He hasn't looked overly impressive. It just seems like it's certainly a possibility. But I know you love those round 3 props, right?
There so
Randy Brown round 2 is 7-1. Randy Brown round 3 is 10-1. And it's like, yeah, dude, break this guy down, tire him out, fatigue him out. And we've seen it with Cowboy Oliveira. I've seen him tap a few times where it's like if his lungs had a little more air, he'd fight it a little bit more. But he's so tired, he's just like, all right, you got me, man. Like, he just kind of rolls over and calls it a no-ma. So I think Brown gets the win. If we're trying to chase some of those nice plus money props, I think it's at least interesting to see that Randy Brown by submission, or furthermore, Randy Brown by like a 2nd or 3rd round finish.
Yeah, shout out to my guy JRMMA here saying Randy Brown round 3, 22-1, submission round 3.
Submission round 3.
Submission round 3. Sorry. Yeah. Like, if you guys have access to those books that give you the round and method as one package deal, I think that's a solid play there. So shout out to my guy JRMMA for that one. All right, we're getting right to the main card here, and I do want to remind you guys, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, Cody is back on the channel with me, Dan Levy from Best Fight Picks / Half the Battle, and my guy Brett Abley from Daily Fan MMA. We got a star-studded crew for you guys tomorrow night to break down the fights one last time for you guys with the weigh-ins in mind. Obviously, Alex Oliveira is somebody that we want to see on the scales. Karl Roberson is another guy we want to see on the scales. Let's see how that possibly changes our perspective on the fights now that we finally see them about 24 hours before they're supposed to step into the cage and fight each other. So make sure you guys join us tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on my channel. It's going to be a banger. All right, let's get to the main card. First and foremost, we got Anthony Smith going up against the young up-and-comer Jimmy Crute here. You got minus 190 on Crute and plus 165 on Lionheart Smith. And this is another one where I played that game, I can't believe this motherfucker is only 32 years old. Anthony Smith is only 32, coming into his 51st pro MMA fight. Apparently, he has a bunch, that aren't on record, according to him. So maybe he's up into that 60 or 70 mark. But he's fallen on rough times outside of that submission victory he had over Devin Clark last time around. We were pretty much writing off Anthony Smith, right? Going into that Devin Clark fight. Everybody's like, look at his body language, look at the way he's competing. He has no takedown defense. He has no urgency to get back to his feet. He doesn't even have the urgency to throw up a submission. So obviously Devin Clark should be able to run through him, right? Haha, stupid us trying to trust Devin Clark to pull off a victory for us. And that does not transpire. He does end up getting choked out there. So good bounce back win for Anthony Smith. But I don't think it tells us much that we didn't already know, right? Devin Clark has good wrestling, gets the takedown. Anthony Smith has decent jiu-jitsu when he's able to go up against a guy like Devin Clark. He gets the submission. Now you're fighting a guy, a young upstart here in Jimmy Crute, who wants to make a name for himself, right? He has only one loss on his record, that Peruvian necktie loss to Misha Cirkunov. And I feel like a lot of people are ready to start throwing Crute under the bus after he got tapped out by that. But man, me and you both know how high level Cirkunov's jiu-jitsu game is. Say what you want about his chin, but his jiu-jitsu is next level, which is why he's able to get the Peruvian necktie on not just one guy. He has multiple on his record. But Jimmy Crute is a high-level jiu-jitsu player himself. He showed it in the next fight against Mihailo Oleg. Say what you want about Oleg. He was still able to go out there and get the submission victory. And then he just bombs on Modestas Bukauskas last time around. So great win for him there. But now this is the true test. This is a gatekeeper fight. This is where Anthony Smith decides whether Jimmy Crute should enter the top 10 or remain as this just bottom dweller in the light heavyweight division. I think he uses his jiu-jitsu and his wrestling to its best abilities and grinds Anthony Smith out here. Now, I've kind of been tossing up and around. Does he finish him or does he just grind him out over 3 rounds? And I kind of give the benefit of the doubt later in this week now to Anthony Smith's durability and his ability to just survive, right? It took until round 4 of Glover Teixeira pounding his teeth in to eventually finish him. And then obviously there was the fight after that where you just got decision by Alexander Rakic over 3 rounds. I think it's going to play out similar to the Rakic fight. We might see Jimmy Crute a little bit more offensively minded than we saw Rakic, who seemed to be comfortable just playing that fight in the full guard. I think we might see Crute go for it here and there, but ultimately I don't think he ends up finishing him. So what I'm actually going to be leaning for here is the over 1.5 minus 185. Hella chalky, but I fully see the way that these guys are matched up with each other that this will go over the 7.5 minute mark. Fight starts around 3, even money. Minus 115. I think that's a very good spot too. And if we want to get even more specific with it, Crute to win by decision is plus 285. I don't think that that's a bad spot. Earlier this week, I think he was going to finish him, but as this week is starting to go on, I'm starting to think that Smith is just going to, gut it out, and Crute will obviously, get the control time, get the top pressure, get the work from on top, and take home a judge's decision. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I got to go the other way. I'm a big Jimmy Crute fan.
Right.
I like what he brings to the table for sure. He's only 25 years old, but here's a kid that's already, I think he just got awarded his BJJ black belt, and he's, kickboxing under Sam Greco, my boy, out in Australia. Like, he's really putting it all together and, adding those wrinkles to his game, adding that skill to his game. The one thing that I am worried about is that I don't know that he's got great cardio. So he's going out there and he's finishing guys very quickly. He seems to be a tad, hyper aggressive, maybe a little bit over aggressive. And I think that's what's going to tire him out. When you look at his run so far, I mean, Dana White's Contender Series fight, it's a first-round finish. His debut against Paul Craig, my God, talk about a sloppy fight. Like, he gets reversed multiple times. He is very, very tired. But again, I mean, he's fighting a BJJ black belt, Paul Craig, and in the third round, he's the one that prevails. He's the one that he attacked that Kimura like 6 times. I'm like, what are you doing going for the Kimura again? And he taps him with it. It's like, shit, he's making adjustments live on the fly. Getting 3 rounds under your belt, it's like, that's good for him. He needs to get extended. He needs to go deeper into fights so that he can improve. And then since then, there's been nothing. Knocks out Sam in the first, submitted by Misha in the first. He almost TKO'd me, dude. He's on top of him.
Yeah.
He's raining down the punishment. Then he gets swept in Peruvian necktie. But anyways, it's in the first. The Michael Alexichuk fight, it's in the first. And then Modestas Bukaukas last time out, it's in the first. So the one thing with Anthony Smith is he's quite literally made it an entire career on taking a Homer Simpson-style beating in the first couple rounds and coming back. And what I mean by that is, like, he is down big time. He lost the first 2 rounds to Andrew Sanchez, but he gets him in the third. The Hector Lombard fight, he gets cooked the first 2 rounds. Takes him in the third.
Yeah.
The Volkan Oezdemir fight, he loses the first 2 rounds. Takes him in the third. Went 5 rounds with John Jones. Alexander Gustafsson wins the first 2, loses the third. Momentum's going the other way now. Boom! Subs him in the fourth. So that is, in fact, very much an issue as far as being a Jimmy Crute supporter in this spot, is that I do think he wins this fight. But if he doesn't go out there and get an early finish, and this fight ends up going 3 rounds, we haven't seen him go 3 rounds very often. And when the last time we did see it, a couple years ago now, he was out of sorts against Paul Craig, right? So, yeah, Anthony Smith's got a lot that he can offer him. Anthony Smith's had 50 pro fights, but he's only 32 years old. Is he shop-worn? Is he still young enough? By the numbers, he's entering the prime of his career. But as far as looking at his record, he's taken a lot of damage. You mentioned he went 4 rounds of Glover. He went 5 rounds of Glover. He got finished early in the 5th round. But Glover was apologizing to him in there, being like, dude, I am sorry that you're going to have to go home after this and introduce your family to the new Anthony, because you're never going to be the same, man. I'm really sorry about this. And he's just like, it's okay. He just gets
part of the job.
Very tough to watch, but it was like, holy shit. Then Alexander Rakic, what was tough to watch about that fight is a 15-minute fight, and Anthony Smith landed 9 significant strikes. He got dropped. He got outstruck. Not a very great fight. He just didn't even land anything. And then Devin Clark, it's Devin Clark. He hits him with a triangle choke leg. Okay, great. He probably won't hit Jimmy Crute with that triangle. I think Crute gets the takedowns if he wants them. And beyond that, Anthony Smith's got like a shell-up defense. He's done it multiple times. He did it against Hector Lombard. He actually did it against Leonardo Guimaraes back in the day. If UFC debut, it might be, or like after the Strikeforce buyout stuff, and he came back. He wins the first 2 rounds and almost gets finished in the third with his shell-up defense. But that same shell-up defense against Glover, it's just like you take a lot of damage. I think Jimmy Crute's strong. I think Jimmy Crute will go out there. He can strike with him for a little bit, let that overhand right go, hit him, hurt him. Anthony Smith tends up to shell up against the cage. It's when you get him to the ground, he goes to like a 4. He goes to like his hands and knees almost, like a wrestling stance without standing up, and just allows himself to just take damage. I think that Jimmy Crute probably goes out there and does lay it on him. So I did have to go the other way. I ended up going with Jimmy Crute. I got Jimmy Crute by TKO, which is plus 170. And I think that it just wears on him and hopefully takes him out. Hopefully in the first, get it done before you get tired. But if not in the first, in the second round, let the hands go, hurt this guy standing, peel him to the ground, beat him on the ground, and just make him work. Anthony Smith's got a cozy job commentating right now. You know, he's fought the best guys in the world. He's generally given a good account of himself, but he has taken damage. He's got 50 fights. He's fought at many different weight classes. You know, I don't actually believe he's really a 205er. I think he's best at 185. There's just a lot. And again, come on, I always bring back the fact that he has a greasy split decision over a home invader who smokes a meth before breaking into his house. So there are limitations to his game, right? And I think that Jimmy Crute, even without the meth, is just going to get him to the ground and work him over a little bit. So I got Crute. As far as like, you know, this is a prop show, so I have to take a prop. So I'm going to take that Crute by TKO at plus 170. But I mean, listen, I would probably just rather it Crute straight up. It is a tough fight. It's definitely a step up fight for him. And again, if you like betting fights for the live betting purpose, I could see Anthony Smith coming back. Like Jimmy Crute might run through him in the first round, and you know Smith survives. That's decent. You're going to get a good plus money price going into the second. If you're going into the third and it's 1-1, you live bet Anthony Smith. If it's going into the third and it's 2-0 Crute, but Crute's keeling over, huffing and puffing, it's a punt play at that point. But again, you're probably going to get a much better live bet price on it than this pre-bet price.
Dare I put out the plus 1875 on Smith to win in round 3? Dare I do it? Sure. Cody Saftic.
Yeah, that's one of those spots that you'd look for sure. I mean, again, I think the crazier things have happened. This fight looks like it could play out that way. For sure. All right. I'm glad that we're both on the Crute side, but let's see if this fight does get, stretched out into that third round, how his cardio looks and if he's able to pull the victory out. So, all right. Next up, we got Chris Weidman taking on Uriah Hall. This is a rematch of a fight that I believe took place in Ring of Combat. I believe that's the company over there in that New York, New Jersey area. And that fight took place way back in September of 2010. So we're talking about over 11 years removed, or close to 11 years removed since that fight originally took place. Chris Weidman did end up winning that fight via KO in the first round. And they've obviously had a very different path to the UFC and different paths within the UFC. Obviously, Chris Weidman achieving the middleweight title a couple years ago over Anderson Silva, defeating the mythical Anderson Silva the way that he did, and then Uriah Hall having to make his way through the Ultimate Fighter and ultimately losing to Kelvin Gastelum in the finals. This is an interesting fight to me, right? Like you got minus 125, minus 130-ish for Weidman. You see the line starting to go the Weidman way. And, if you watch the last two fights alone, you kind of understand why, right? Uriah Hall, notoriously a slow starter, doesn't really have the greatest amount of volume at times. And then he starts to pick his actions up later. And more often than not, he's getting bailed out with his power, right? Just as Bevan Lewis, just as Krzysztof Jotko, and then obviously Anderson Silva last time around. Don't forget, in that fight, he dropped the first 2 rounds to Silva, as Silva was just a more active fighter at that point in time. Not saying it was by a huge margin or anything like that, and it was more so Uriah Hall's fault for not throwing as much punches as he should have. But you'd think that his time down at Fortis MMA would have had him looking a little bit better, even though he came out on the winning end in that fight. His jab looked fucking amazing against Antonio Carlos Jr. whenever that fight was vertical and Jr. didn't have him clinched up or have his back or anything like that. Very close fight too, right? A lot of people thought that Carlos Jr.'s control and the minimal amount of damage he did should have outweighed the damage that Uriah Hall did. It is what it is. Uriah Hall gets the victory there. And then Chris Weidman last time around, right? Goes 1-1 in the first 2 rounds against Akhmedov and then pulls out the decision in the third round. It's a good win for him there. But I think a lot of people are already starting to forget about the Chris Weidman chin issues, which I do think is still a big, big concern. Like when you see him getting hurt in those earlier fights when he was getting finished, like it wasn't like the craziest shots that was putting him out or making him wobbly or anything like that. And something that we can kind of almost guarantee that Uriah Hall has in the majority of his shots is power. The guy has a lot of power in his shots, whether he's moving backwards, whether he's moving forwards, whether he's throwing spinning shit, flying shit, or just regular technical shit, he's going to land on you and he's going to hurt you. And I think that this might have the feel of, when you're holding a Derek Brunson ticket against Kevin Holland, get this fight to the ground. The longer you're on the feet, you're probably going to get knocked the fuck out. That's what every Weidman bettor is probably going to be thinking this weekend. But the difference between the Brunson bet and the Weidman bet is you're getting plus 150 on Brunson, and here you're getting minus 130 on Weidman. I don't understand the supreme confidence that people seem to have here on Weidman. I don't want to touch this fight whatsoever. The only thing that I would touch is the KO prop on Uriah Hall here at plus 250 or closing in on that plus 250 range. I do think that Weidman's chin is still a huge liability here. I don't think that he'll be able to handle the power of Uriah Hall, but then how much can we truly trust Uriah Hall to throw enough strikes out there to find that knockout blow?
there's just so many question marks in this fight. Both guys are 36. They're on their last legs inside the UFC. Chris Weidman, for some reason, believes that he can make a title run at this point. You're not beating Israel Adesanya, first and foremost. You're not beating Robert Whittaker. You're not getting past the top 5, top 7 in this division, maybe even the top 10. But I don't even think he gets past Uriah Hall here. And I have very little confidence just due to the lack of volume and output we see from Uriah. But I do think he still possesses the power to knock out a guy who has the chin of Chris Weidman, which I truly question still at this point in time. So I'm going Uriah Hall. I'm going knockout. I'm not entirely sure which round. This could also be another 3rd round prop where Chris Weidman starts to slow down and Uriah Hall, when his big finishes do happen, they do tend to happen later in the fight. So maybe you try to zone in or hone in on that Uriah Hall round 3, which is currently plus 800. That's it. Yeah, I wouldn't even take a stab there, to be honest. I'd rather just take the KO prop at plus 250 just so it covers me over the whole 15 minutes. But yeah, I like Hall here. Again, not with the craziest confidence. I'm questioning the level of confidence people have in Chris Weidman. If they think that he can just grind him out for 10 out of the 15 minutes and then stay conscious enough for the other 5 minutes, then okay, I get it. He's the more active fighter. It makes absolute sense. But I just don't trust that chin, man. I think that Uriah Hall will do a good enough job of, finding the chin at some point in these 15 minutes and putting him out. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Chris Weidman's got this confidence about him that he's going to get the UFC title back. He's going to go on another run. But yeah,
I love the guy.
yeah, dude, listen, I love the guy too, but he's kind of got that delusion about him. Like, he's always thought about that. He's always talked like that. Even when he took that one-off fight with Dominic Reyes at 205 pounds, he was very adamant that he was going to win the UFC's light heavyweight title and how he would beat John Jones and his wrestling is so good and this and that. Like, I often think, like, where does he get it from? But I also remember his dad publicly went on record to say, he's still my boy after the Luke Rockhold fight. And I think maybe his old man's delusional too. Listen, how could you not like Chris Weidman and the things that he's done for the sport? He was supposed to be the middleweight GOAT, greatest of all time. He beats Anderson Silva not once but twice. And both the ways he does it, knocks him out the first time. Second time he shatters his leg. It's like, oh, it's a passing of the torch moment. But it felt a lot like the Machida era. It didn't last very long. It seemed like he was the best guy in the world, but he just failed to really follow it up with anything. In fact, he beat Lyoto Machida in a 5-round decision that he lost the first round. I didn't think he looked all that good in that fight. And then beyond that, he beats an old man, Vitor Belfort. And then it's been just downhill since then. I know people speculate the injuries. He's had neck surgery. He's had a bad knee. He's had, a lot of wear and tear. I know a lot of people speculate USADA and that he has it similar to an Anthony Pettis or a Johnny Hendricks or a Renan Barao. That same time period of the best guys at that time haven't really followed through. Or call it just he's fighting the absolute creme de la creme best guys in the world, which he is. He just doesn't look all that good. He's taking a lot of damage and he's fatiguing. Luke Rockhold, it's competitive early. The longer it goes, he gets tired and Luke Rockhold ends up TKO him. And he took a lot of damage in that fight. It should have been stopped a lot earlier, but they let it continue and he got banged up. Yoel Romero, man, he's winning the fight. In the 3rd round, flying knee, talk about a lot of damage, that changes a guy. Gegard Mousasi, he's winning the early portion of that fight. That series of knees he eats to the face, man, that'd change a guy. Jacare Souza, he's winning the fight. But in the 3rd round, he's dead dog tired. And Jacare just starts winging bombs and pressuring him. And as soon as Jacare lands on him, he topples over. It's a lot of damage. It's another repetitive theme of him getting tired. When he gets tired, he starts to get hit. When he starts to get hit, he's not taking these shots all that well. The Dominic Reyes fight, it's at 205. Reyes not necessarily the biggest power puncher going, but didn't matter, This first time he really touched Weidman in that fight, Chris toppled over. But one thing, and then Omari Akhmedov fight, he was so gassed. Like, it's like you got to think, maybe it was the wrestling heavy approach that tired him out. But when you look back at all the other fights, it's the same thing. I mean, he just gets tired in there. Omari is not able to take advantage of that situation. Those guys were. Hall, again, traditionally, he's the guy that comes through. Ask Mousasi, ask Jotko, ask these guys that hang a little too long. You talk about the Anderson Silva fight. See, that one's interesting to me. So Uriah Hall is a huge Anderson Silva fan. And it's a crazy moment to be fighting your idol. And he's super tentative. And Hall has fought tentatively in his career before, but he's super tentative in that fight. And Juan's got to imagine if it's like, fuck, I'm fighting Anderson Silva. I'm not going to hurt this guy. I'm just going to take my time, 5 rounds. I'll put him away when I need to put him away. And he does. And as soon as he puts him away, he cries. He sits there with him. And he cries, and he tells him, you're a hero, man. Love you. What better way to honor this man to take out fucking Chris Weidman, Go out there and get some vengeance for Anderson Silva. You like him so much. But you know what? Daniel Cormier fought Anderson Silva at UFC 200. Walk in the park win. And looked awful. I mean, looked awful. And Anderson Silva was taking the fight on short note. Or it was a short notice fight. But regardless, it's like, what the hell happened? You know what? DC was fighting Anderson Silva. Kind of a crazy spot. UFC 200 took it easy on him. The best actual notice of that is Anderson Silva versus Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson was coming off all first-round victories. Knocked out Ed Herman in the first round. Knocked out Sam Alvey in the first round. Knocked out Uriah Hall in the first round. Bum rushed Whitaker. Hurt Whitaker in the first round. And then got knocked out. Fought Anderson Silva and just stood there and stared. Ended up losing a split decision. Bullshit split. It was a unanimous. Bullshit unanimous decision. Brunson should have won. But it was like there's this aura of like, holy shit, dude, I'm fighting Anderson Silva. I think that's what happened to Hall. So if Hall stares at Weidman, it's not going to go good. If Hall goes out there and can stuff these takedowns and make him work and tire him out a little bit, he's going to be live in that third round. And then I know you love those third round props. This one's only 8-1 because like the bookies thinking the same thing too. They're like, okay, Chris Weidman and it's Uriah Hall. As you mentioned, Hall likes to get it done late, spectacular fashion. Weidman likes to blow it late in spectacular fashion. So writing's on the wall a little bit there, but yeah, I'd have to agree. I think Hall's just got to make sure he keeps his fight standing, and beyond that, he's got to make him work. The one thing that is concerning, and it's the reason why I'm not going to want to be heavily invested in here, is talk about an awesome stat for Chris Weidman. He's had 16 fights in the UFC. He's taken down all 16 guys at least once. Wow. That's pretty fucking impressive. You know what I mean? Alessio Sakara 5 times, Jesse Bongfeld once, Tom Lawler once, Maia 4 times, Munoz twice, Anderson Silva once, Machida 5 times, Vitor once, Rockhold 3 times, Yoel Romero once, Gegard Mousasi 4 times, Kelvin Gastelum 7 times, Jacare once, Dominic Reyes once, Omar Akhmedov 5 times. He's taken on 205ers and gotten them down. He's taken on Olympians like Yoel Romero and gotten them down. He's taken on 16 different men. That's a lie because he took down Anderson Silva, same guy. You know what I'm saying? He's fought 16 times in the UFC. Win or lose, short finish, full 15 minutes. One thing is trial and true about him. He's scored a takedown in all these fights. He goes out there against Uriah Hall, scores a takedown. Uriah Hall's not getting back up. Uriah Hall's probably not getting back up. He doesn't got a great get-up game. You know, similar to the Antonio Carlos Jr. fight, when Carlos Jr. got him down, he just took his back and controlled him. It was the second and the third round when Carlos Jr. can't get the fight to the ground. That's when he starts using that jab. That's when he starts busting him up. Same thing here. And, you know, we talked about live betting opportunities. This is another one. Weidman probably does go out there and win that first round. He probably does successfully get the takedown. He's got an entire history of it. By the way, Uriah Hall's not the best wrestler Chris Weidman's ever fought. This fight probably does hit the mat in the first round. It's in the second and the third round. If Weidman gets tired the same way he did against Akhmedov, and Hall can stay to the outside, stick him with the jab, make him work, smash him with the flying knee up the middle, hit him with a wheel kick, hit him with some flashy technique he doesn't see coming, then he can make it interesting. Then he can change the course to his favor. But it's going to be a tough one in that first round. You can't discredit Weidman and his ability to get the fight to the ground. It's whether he can consistently do that for 2 of the 3 rounds. And even fights that Weidman's up to, he doesn't just lose the third round. He gets finished in the third round, right? That's the problem, right? Yeah. Otherwise, Weidman up 2018 going into the third, yeah, plausible. I think it probably does happen. He's very untrustworthy in that third. But if you could live bet that because he looks shaky going into the third, but he's up 2, you're going to get a huge plus money price tag on Uriah Hall. And I think he's live for a finish at some point.
Yeah, if you have the option to cash out after round 2 with Weidman, I'd say just take the money, even if it's just partial winnings. Just don't even bother with that third round. Who knows what the fuck's going to happen there. All right, we're on the cusp of the 3 title fights here. But our guy in the chat, Wael Al Gadban, brings up a good point here. Mortal Kombat drops tomorrow. Are you Team Sub-Zero or are you Team Scorpion? I've always been a Sub-Zero guy. Well, you ever follow Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, of course. I actually like Scorpion. That was my guy.
Scorpion?
Yeah,
Sub-Zero's my guy.
right. I understand. Everybody loves Sub-Zero. The video games, he was like the more popular character. He had like the better combo set. He's, better in the movie. And I don't know why. It's just like these little things that like stick with you when you're a kid. But when I was a kid, when he'd be like, get over here, and he'd fucking fire that thing and it would just dice you down, there was nothing cooler than that, man. So he was always my guy. Also, like, I don't know, all the other kids obviously wanted to be the blue ninja, and there was the readily available yellow ninja, so that's who I ended up taking. I'm a fan of mid-carders. Your boy Sub-Zero, he's co-main eventing. He's main eventing. Scorpio, not quite much. He's a mid-carder kind of guy, like badass Billy Gunn. My guy.
I'm gonna be grabbing that movie tomorrow and probably watch it tomorrow in anticipation for UFC 261. So I can't wait for that. All right, let's get to the championship title fights. This is what everybody wants to hear about. This is what everybody is here for. First and foremost, we got the flyweight title on the line. We got Valentina Shevchenko going up against Jessica Andrade, who made a successful debut at flyweight by dispatching of Katlyn Chookagian late in that first round with a beautiful body shot that just absolutely cripples her, and then follows up with some great ground and pound to finish her off there. So good win for Andrade, and it just tells you the state of the flyweight division when you can go in there, get a quick win, and vault into a title shot, because Valentina's pretty much just wiped the rest of the division out of place, right? There really isn't anybody else at 125 that seems to be a clear contender. And you have Jessica Andrade, former strawweight champion, somebody that you can bank on to, be exciting. And you just vault her in this fight against Shevchenko. But I think she's just technically outskilled here, man. Shevchenko is definitely the GOAT at this division for a reason. It's very hard to put her away. It's very hard to, get your own game going off, unless, of course, you're Amanda Nunes. But you're dealing with somebody that's like, 8 inches shorter than Nunes here with Jessica Andrade, who's going to be coming in at 5'1". So I believe Shevchenko will have either a 4 or 5 inch height advantage here, obviously a reach advantage too. But I think it's ultimately just going to be her technical game that just flusters Jessica Andrade. Now, the only changes and progresses that we've seen in Andrade's game since she's kind of burst onto the scene, she just moves her head a little bit better. That's really about it. Everything else is the same. She wings forward. She throws wide looping shots. More often than not, she's able to get the knockout. If she's not able to, then she gets pieced up for 15 or 25 minutes and then loses a decision. I will say this, she was coming on strong in that Rose Namajunas fight the second time around. In that third round, she was really busting up Rose at the end of that fight. And I'm not sure if it was due to Rose's lack of cardio. She's always seemed to be a fighter that has solid cardio, but it seemed like Andrade was starting to land on her late in that fight. Unfortunately for her, Andrade still ends up coming up on the losing end there. Great performance against Katlyn Chookagian, but it seems like when you have a fighter as technically good as Joanna or as Shevchenko, they can stay away from the big shots of Andrade and just piece her apart from the outside. And I think that's what we're going to get here with Shevchenko. Not to mention, we are back in the big cage, and I feel like that does favor Shevchenko ever so slightly here. I'm not a huge proponent of saying if this was in the small cage, Andrade knocks her ass out, but that does definitely add to the advantage here for Shevchenko. I also think that if Shevchenko wants to take the Chookagian or the Maya route in terms of tripping her and taking her to the ground and kind of smothering her from on top, she could absolutely do that too. I'm not the most sold on the fact that Jessica Andrade is any good off of her back. And I think that the biggest way that Andrade actually wins this fight, most people would think it would be the knockout. But my concern is if she's actually the stronger one in the clinch. What if she pushes her up against the cage and kind of just does it for 15 minutes, takes her down or whatever it is, right? A lot of people want to bank on the second round that Jennifer Maia had over Valentina Shevchenko. But if you watch that back, it was Shevchenko going for a failed takedown. Jennifer Maia capitalizes on it, ends up on top of her for 2 minutes, and then, her betting line goes down from minus 2,500 to minus 350 for one round. And then she just goes back to, business as usual for rounds 3, 4, and 5, takes her down, does her work from on top. And I think that would be the safest approach from her here. She's going to be, I believe that, as much of a tank as Andrade is, I think that Valentina Shevchenko is the stronger one here. She's obviously going to be the bigger fighter too. And she's not going to be intimidated at all by this girl, right? We know Shevchenko is a fucking mean person herself. She's just intimidating in her own aspects. But in terms of the striking game, she's way more diverse on the feet. Her kicking game will really help her. She seems kind of stiff and tense on the outside at times, but it's just like a little ball of energy just waiting to explode. That's when she's just she doesn't telegraph any of her shots. When she throws her spinning back kick, it just comes so quickly that fighters aren't able to, telegraph it or see it coming, and they ultimately, eat the brunt of the shot there. So I think that Andrade will have an issue with the speed, the technical striking abilities of Shevchenko, and not to mention Shevchenko going into that Holly Holm fight. Nobody really thought she'd be able to beat her over 5 rounds in a stand-up fight. That's exactly what she did. Holly Holm is so good at setting traps and, beating you to the punch and those striking exchanges. But Shevchenko clean sweeped her in that fight, man. She was ripping her up with that lead hook of hers, and obviously some good kicks to bat too. But I do like Shevchenko here. She is worthy of that minus 400-ish range that she's currently at. My concern was the method in which she wins. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Andrade here. I think she survives the 25 minutes. I think we do see Shevchenko go out there and squeeze out a decision here. Actually, not even a squeeze. I think she wins pretty much 4 out of 5, if not all 5 rounds here, and wins a decision. So I'll go Shevchenko by decision at plus 140. Not too bad of a line. And I think she's parlayable here. Say what you want about it being chalky, but I think that this is a solid spot for her to go out there and expose Jessica Andrade. Like, Andrade seems intimidating. She seems like a serious threat. But then when you really like boil it down, there are the fighters that are just technically better than her that will beat her, like the Rose Namajunas, like the Ioane and Jaceks. And I think that Valentina Shevchenko is the best out of that pack, and she should be able to go out there and put on a good performance. So I got Shevchenko decision plus 130, I believe is what I said. How do you see this one?
Yeah, very fair. I think that Jessica Andrade poses a lot of problems, but ultimately you got the women's flyweight GOAT in Valentina Shevchenko. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of competition for her at 125 pounds. They're desperate for challengers. Jessica Andrade's fought at 135. She's fought at 115. She always gives a good account of herself. Why not put her in the spot and see what she can do? So it'd be a fun fight. This is the best line that you're getting on Shevchenko for a long time because she's always these 10-1 plus favorites. But see, the thing about her is that she's got this credited kickboxing background, great kickboxer, great striking. And yet a lot of her fights now, she just wants to get these fights to the ground. She wants to out-grapple her opponent. She's got a very grappling-heavy approach. And then all of a sudden, it's like kickboxing's taking a back seat. So when you look at the numbers, realistically, the fight with Jennifer Maia last week, it's a 25-minute-long fight. She lands 62 significant strikes. It's not much, but the 5 takedowns, right? The Caitlin Chukagian fight, she puts her away in the third, but it's 40 significant strikes landed going into the third round with the 3 takedowns. The Liz Carmouche fight, 42 significant strikes landed in 5 rounds. 1 takedown in that fight. Jessica Ai, 2 takedowns. Joanna Jacek, 5 takedowns. Priscilla Cachoeira, who I'm sure you didn't even really need to take down. It was a very easy path to victory, and she did take it. 2 takedowns. It's like she's just interested in getting these fights to the ground and grinding the opponent. So the problem with Jessica Andrade is that, are you going to go out there and just wrestle her down? I mean, she's very physically strong. She's also 5'2". She has a low center of gravity. Taking her down's a problem. Holding her down's a problem. She's very strong. She's wily. As far as the fight stays standing, we give advantage to Shevchenko because we know how good her striking is, but she's got a reluctancy to actually strike all that much anymore. So with Andrade, it's like she's a no fucks given fighter. She just lets her hands fly. She's basically a female version of John Lineker. And as far as output being a problem for her, it's not a problem. You look at fights in the same period of time, her versus Rose Namajunas, that's only 15 minutes. The second fight, obviously, right? 71 significant strikes landed, and she's coming on hot in the third.
Yeah.
That thing goes 5, it's 100 for sure. The first time around, it only just lasted into the second round. She already landed 47. She's closing the distance. She's ripping the body. She's hurting the leg. Her versus Tisha Torres, 92. Her versus Claudia Gadelha, 141 significant strikes landed in 15 minutes. Her versus Angela Hill, 131 significant strikes landed in 15 minutes. That time she fought Joanna, she got nailed 225 times. Kept coming forward. Good chin. BJJ black belt, tough to submit, tough to take down. She's got the variables, right? So Valentina looks flawless, absolutely flawless. But then if you want to falter, that last fight with Jennifer Maia, that's like the one time you can falter because A, she probably does lose the first round. And B, it's like, she just did the same thing to everybody else. I'll just take her down. And yeah, you could do it against Jennifer Maia, take her down. But when she got on top, I mean, Valentina off her back looked a little stiff, She didn't look like she was popping back up as quick. She didn't look like, she was overly comfortable there. Is she comfortable there? Yeah, she's black belt. Remember that fight with Juliana Pena? Same thing, taken down, armbar right off her back. But with Andrade, it's like if Andrade's going to take you down, then you could have a bit of a problem. Now, Andrade usually does have a cardio problem herself, but when you look back at that Rose fight the second time around, it looked like she was just coming to her own. The Caitlin Chukagian fight, she kind of slow starting in the early portion of that first round, and then just puts it on her, boots her in the body. TKOs her at the end of the first. Like, she's a little tank engine, man. She gets better as time goes. At 125, not a terrible weight cut. One's got to imagine she's got a little gas in the tank and can push a pace for a little bit. It's interesting. It's certainly interesting. At least it's a more interesting fight for Valentina than we have had. But I got to go with the champ to retain. I think she's a special talent. She's been there. She's done that. She's seen it all. She's the only girl that's reasonably given Amanda Nunes a reasonable fight, and she did it twice. Arguably got robbed the second time around. She's probably the only person that's got a good chance of maybe beating Amanda Nunes if she was to move up to 135 and make it happen. Like, at least this is that girl. Now, Nunes looks on a different level since then. And quietly, Shevchenko, 33 years old now, but she's still got the goods. But how do I attack this from a prop standpoint? I like the over 2.5, the over 3.5, and that maybe Shevchenko by decision. We'll start with the 2.5. If Shevchenko wins, she's looking to use those takedowns again. She's going to take this fight to the ground. She's going to try to grind you. It's a slower paced fight. not huge on output. We've already outlined that. If Andrade wins, she's not one punching Shevchenko, you know?
No.
Is she snatching up a guillotine or something, like a fluke move like that? Maybe. But more so than not, she slams her on the ground, she holds her down, she tries to bank a few rounds. So this thing's getting rounds in. Over 2.5 minus 185, it is chalk. It's not the worst. The over 3.5, again, I think this thing's getting into the 4th or 5th round at the very least. Over 3.5 is minus 135, better price tag. And then finally with Shevchenko, I mean, I wouldn't say she's a decision machine, but she's got really high ring IQ. She knows where the easiest path to victory is. If you want to fight 3 times a year, you don't get in 3 wars a year. You don't get in 3 fight of the year candidates. You don't fight like Justin Gaethje. You know, if you want to do that, you'll be fighting once a year. That's how it's. This girl is going out there. She'll fight 3-4 times a year. Don't take any damage. Move on with your brain intact, healthy, wealthy. One of the most dominant champions in flyweight history, men's or women's. Shevchenko's got a nice little legacy going. You don't just throw that all away to bang it out with Jessica Andrade standing. It's like, no, man, that's the one thing you don't want to do. So I think she looks to take the smart path, and the smart path is grind this thing down and win rounds. Yeah. So over 2.5, over 3.5. Shevchenko has her way. She grinds it over 25. Hopefully picks up that decision, and then that Shevchenko by decision is plus 140. So have your go at that. But the spot I like the most is that 2.5.
Yeah, I like that as well. I think that this will be slowed down. Why risk it? Like you said, why go in the pocket with Jessica Andrade and risk your legacy and risk your winning streak and risk your opportunity to potentially have that trilogy fight with Amanda Nunes and possibly try to, recover that loss. The super fight that I want to see is if Zhang is able to continue her stretch and she goes up to 125 and fight Valentina. Maybe if Valentina gets past that, she can make a case for herself to be like, all right, give me Nunes now. Look, I've destroyed pretty much everybody, including the champion below me. Let me go up and fight there. So yeah, we both like Shevchenko by decision. We think this banks rounds. We think this goes the full 25 minutes, and plus 134 Shevchenko to win by decision is not too bad of a price tag, considering that she's a minus 420 favorite. And in this spot, I think this is a very good spot for her to go out there and do just that. All right, let's move on to the co-main event and the second title fight that we have. We have the UFC Women's Strawweight Championship on the line here. We got Weili Zhang going up against Rose Namajunas. Now, Rose loses her title to Jessica Andrade, comes back after like a year or so, beats Jessica Andrade 2-1, and it wasn't looking good in terms of how the momentum was shifting in that fight, and now she finds herself once again in a title fight. And I'm not sure how many people are really out there kind of banging the drum, being like, she doesn't deserve the title, because stylistically she presents some interesting threats here to Zhang that I don't think Zhang has seen in the UFC at this point in time. I'm a huge fan of this fight. I think Rose definitely has the loudest bark out of any of the dogs that are fighting for a title this weekend. But I ultimately do think that the China representative here and Zhang pulls off the victory. Now, we know what Rose's approach is, right? She likes to use her footwork. She likes to go on the outside. She likes to pick her opponents apart from the outside, and then just get out of the way and then start moving again, and then pretty much rinse and repeat from there. One thing that is kind of being swept under the rug, and we haven't seen it in her last several fights, is her ground game. She has a really crafty jiu-jitsu game that not a lot of people are talking about nowadays, because like her last 4 fights have pretty much just been stand-up fights, right? She goes out there and outstrikes these women on the feet, or she loses the fights getting slammed on her head by Jessica Andrade. But I think that's an aspect of this fight that if it does come into play, things could the line could look much closer than it should. I do like Zhang here, though. I think that she'll be able to keep the fight on the feet. She has 100% takedown defense. She's great with the combinations. She throws with absolute heat. The one thing that I like is that let me just take care of something right there. All right. The one thing that I did like about this was the combinations and the countering of Zhang in the pocket, right? Rose is always going to have to come into the pocket to get her strikes off. But the good thing that Zhang does is she holds her ground and she lets her strikes go. And she always wants to be the last one to have the last say in those combinations. She has a great leg kick. And more often than not, you see fighters finishing their combinations with leg kicks. She more often than not starts her combinations with a leg kick, which is not an approach you see that much from fighters nowadays. But I think that's going to be very important for her to establish that leg kick nice and early here. If you guys remember the second fight with Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Rose, that's something that Joanna pretty much implemented from the get-go, was that leg kick. And it slowed down Rose the later the fight went. So I think it'll be very important for Zhang to do the same thing here so that she can get her hands going a little bit more on the feet, and Rose isn't as mobile the later later this fight goes. Now, Rose could have success earlier in this fight, but I think the later that it goes, we'll see the power, the pressure, and the technique of Zhang start to catch up to Rose, and Rose is going to start to slow down. I think she's going to get demoralized, and I think that we see Zhang very likely to finish this fight too. I think that she's very live to go out there and finish this fight in the 4th or 5th round with her strikes. I'd be very surprised if we see Rose actually stand up with her for 5 rounds. Like this isn't really the Joanna and Rose fight. You're getting Zhang, who throws with much more heat, much more power, and much more confidence in her strikes than Joanna, and I think it's going to make Rose pay in this spot. So I do like Zhang here. I do think that she is the least likely to win out of all the 3 champions. But even though she is my least confident, I think she has a hell of a lot of odds and chances to go out there and pull out and defend her title once again here against Rose Namajunas. So I'll go Zhang, better combinations, better technique, and then ultimately putting her out late in this fight. I like the round 4, round 5 props here in terms of Zhang. We got round 4 coming in at plus 1400, round 5 coming in at plus 1900, or even if you just want to take Zhang by KO, plus 255, not too bad of a spot either. But I think that we see Zhang go out there and finish Rose. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I think same thing. I think Zhang breaks her down over time. Zhang is a very, very scary fighter in that she's like sponsored by the state, man. Like all she does is train day in and day out. Like I wouldn't want to make it a political thing. I know Rose is trying to do that. But what's afforded to Zhang is the ability to just train day in and day out. I mean, everything's paid for, everything's catered to her. She has like a sole purpose, and that's to bring exposure to Chinese fighters, put her family in a better position financially, and bring pride to her country, right? How many fighters are doing the same thing? McGregor walks around with an Irish flag. George walks around with a Canadian flag. You're trying to put your country on the map. This girl's extremely dedicated to the cause. She's in extremely good shape. And you just see the improvements every time out from her. She's scary, man. Like, she's extremely physically strong. So in terms of getting her to the ground, good luck. In terms of she wants to take you down, she can. Her wrestling herself is not all that bad. You know, staying out of submissions, striking's good, cardio's good, chin's good, will to win's good, the desire's there. The fight with Rose, with this Joanny and Jacek, that's her gut check performance. That's her, like, finally someone's going to extend you. And, you know, she is getting beat to the punch. She is getting out volume. But it's like the adjustments she makes, the punch selection. When she needs that big punch, she lands that big punch. It's an extremely high-level performance from both ladies. But it just goes to show the improvements from Zhang. We knew that Joanna could do that. We knew that Joanna had the striking. Joanna was once upon a time considered the GOAT because she had already well established herself and proved herself. Zhang just took over that mantle. 31 years old, always getting better. I do see a lot of positive things coming out of her. And with Rose Namajunas, you know, whether she has to talk about all that communist stuff to try to amp herself up for the fight, it doesn't matter. You know, she's got one trait, is that the longer fights go, Rose tends to fall apart a little bit. Call it a mental lapse. You know, I mean, I've been on record talking about it for a lot of the fights, but you know, she always had to have the dog with her, right? Because it's like it's a mental health dog. It's like it's an emotional support dog, right? She has the dog with her all the time. It's got to be there in fight week and this and that. That's fine. You know, McGregor throws a dolly at a bus and it's like she can't fight. You know, she's got PTSD from it. She can't sleep. When she was fighting Invicta back in the day, she would always allude to like she had some traumatic experience in her childhood. Again, don't want to get into it. She's, you know, with dating a full-grown man and Pat Barry at a young age. Like she's had a pretty crazy life, I think. But one thing is, like, when the pressure gets really, really hot on her, and fighting anyways, that tends to be when she falls apart a little bit. So just looking at least like recent history on the matter, we'll start with the Karolina Kowalkiewicz fight. She won the first round of that fight on all 3 judges' scorecards, right? But eventually Karolina, of all people, just keeps coming forward with her, keeps the fight standing, and outstrikes her. So again, we're just looking at it because it's a loss. But she does start good in that fight, wins the first round, and then eventually loses. Now you go to the Joanny and Jacek fight the second time around. She won the first 2 rounds against Joanna in the rematch. Then she lost rounds 3 and 4. She did rally back to win the 5th round and ultimately win the fight. But one has to wonder that the rounds 3 and 4, she starts to fatigue. Her game kind of gets away from her. The Jessica Andrade fight the first time around, she's killing Jessica Andrade, bro. It's 10-8 first round. She absolutely kills her pillar to post. In the second round, Jessica Andrade is able to. People say it was just a slam. It was just a slam. No, watch the entire lead up prior to that. The leg kicks start to slow her down. She's getting to her. She's causing her to work. She gets a hold of that slam, knocks her out. Fine. So you book a rematch. The rematch should have been 5 rounds. What world do we not get 5 rounds in that rematch? Well, we get 3. And what you see in the third, she wins the first 2 rounds. And in the third, she starts to break apart again. So I'm not just saying this stuff to be mean. I'm not just saying stuff to try to be that guy that's getting a reaction or being a dick. I just mean there's that history of she usually always starts off well. She usually always has a good first round. When she knocked out Joanna the first time, great. And it was in the first round. We know that she can start quick. We know that she's very accurate. She's very precise. She's got very good foot movement. She's in and out. Her angles are good. She's got all that. But it's the longer that you can stretch her and put pressure on her and hit her and hurt her and cause her to overthink it and doubt herself, that's when she falls apart. And I think that Zhang is just like way too cast iron mentally. So again, you can probably bet this one live. You know, if you don't like the Zhang straight up, Rose is probably pretty competitive in the first two anyways. I think Zhang takes over beyond that. So looking from this one on a prop perspective, I got the over 3.5 at minus 170. I couldn't tell you much more beyond that. If Rose is going to win this fight, she'd have to catch her. If Zhang's going to win this fight, it's possible that you mentioned the Zhang inside the distance, like by TKO. I don't hate that at all. I think she could break her the longer this one goes. But I don't want to discredit Rose too much because outside of getting pelted on the head by the world's craziest slam, durability has not been an issue for her. Girl can fight. So I feel like this thing's getting some rounds in, but instead of taking that full on, fights going 25 minutes, I looked at the over 3.5 as my way out. So that's the prop I like best in this scenario.
Yeah, this fight should be competitive for about 3 rounds. And then I think after that, we're going to start to see, I'd say 2.5 rounds. And then after that, I think we're going to see Zhang start to take over and truly implement her striking game and possibly find that finish. I cannot wait, though. That fight is probably the one that I'm most anticipating for this weekend. There's nothing that really comes close to it for me. The other title fights are intriguing, but this one seems to have the most sauce on it in terms of the most threat from the underdog. But outside of that, I still think that Zhang retains. All right. We're pretty much at the main event here, and I do want to take this time to once again remind you guys, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, me, Cody, Dan Levy from Best Fight Picks / Half the Battle, as well as Brett Apley from Daily Fan MMA, will be breaking down the card from bottom to top once again for you guys with the weigh-ins in mind, and that's going to be right here on this channel, so make sure you guys hit that subscribe, make sure you guys hit those notifications as well, so you guys are ready for us at 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. Once again, make sure you guys join us for the Ultimate Weigh-In Show, where we break down the card one last time with the weigh-ins in mind. Also, we got close to 270 people in the chat here. Make sure you guys hit that like. Let's hit that 150 mark before we get to the end of the show. And we appreciate everybody joining us on this Thursday night. You guys know Thursday nights, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern is the propping you up night. And that's what exactly me and Cody have been doing for you guys since back in November. And that's what we're going to keep doing for you guys moving forward. So I appreciate all the support and everybody that hopped on over from odds, now knowing where your night should be spent on Thursdays and Fridays right here on this channel. All right, let's get to the main event here. We got Kamaru Usman going up against Jorge Masvidal for the second time. The first time they fought each other way back at UFC 251 on Fight Island back in July of last year, and Usman comes up victorious. Now, the narrative outside or after that fight was Jorge Masvidal took the fight on 6 days' notice. Let's be honest, Cody. We know that there was rumblings in the background that they were trying to make that fight for that date. They couldn't compromise on a number. I believe Jorge Masvidal was somewhat training for the fight at least. It's not like he just hopped off the couch and took that fight on 6 days' notice. Not to mention he made the 170-pound weight limit, so you know he was in somewhat of a shape. But he is legitimately getting 8 weeks now, or 6 to 8 weeks, whatever the fuck it is. So we might see a little bit more improvement from him here. With that said, you're going up with one of the greatest welterweights of all time. And that's all due to respect to my guy, George St. Pierre. But I think that when it's all said and done, Kamaru Usman could definitely make a case for that, given his style, right? You got two of the best traits that you need in the fighting game. You got great cardio so that you can fuel that great wrestling that you have for a 25-minute period, completely wear on your opponent and just, either finish them or grind on them for 25 minutes and get the victory that way. There's a reason he's 18-1. It's very hard to beat this type of fighter. The only guy that's going to come close to it is Colby Covington, who is in pretty much a carbon copy of Kamaru Usman. I'd say the only difference is Kamaru has a little bit more power and Colby might throw a little bit more volume. But those are the only two guys that should be fighting for the welterweight title for the next little while until we see how real Khamzat Chimaev truly is. But I don't think that anybody else is going to beat Kamaru Usman at this point in time. Jorge Masvidal is the perfect example of right place, right time. Right? I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are certain things that he needed to do to secure where he's at this point in his career, but there's a reason he has 14 losses. There's a reason he was just a journeyman before he knocked out Darren Till and then eventually got that crazy flying knee knockout over Ben Askren. If that knee was like 2 inches to the right, Ben Askren survives that knee, and then that's pretty much a Ben Askren clinch fuck, grapple fuck for 15 minutes, right? Let's be honest. That's probably what was going to happen. There's a reason Jorge Masvidal was a plus 180 underdog going into that fight. Now he knocks out Ben Askren, goes out there and takes one of the easiest fights you can take against Nate Diaz and pummels him for 4 rounds or 3 rounds, whatever it was, and gets the victory there. And now all of a sudden he's supposed to beat one of the greatest welterweights of all time. Fuck out of here. Kamaru Usman has great durability. He has great cardio. And a lot of people want to put a lot of stock into Gilbert Burns hurting Kamaru Usman in that first round. Watch that fight back. I think the commentator was just being hella over-biased in that spot. I think that, Kamaru did drop to his hands. Don't get me wrong. Never recorded a knockdown, but he's right back to his feet, right back into his stance, ready to throw down for the rest of that round. It didn't look like he was on wobbly legs. It didn't look like he was close to being finished. It was a perfectly timed shot from Gilbert Burns that put him on his hands, but then we saw Kamaru Usman, like the heart of a champion, was able to get his wits back about him and then eventually start to take over once that fight hit the second and third rounds, eventually finishing him in that third round. But I just don't see this fight going any different than the first one, right? He's going to slow this fight down. He's going to push Jorge Masvidal up against the cage. He's going to be the stronger fighter in those positions. He may not land crazy amount of takedowns this time around, but he still should be able to control Jorge up against the cage. When Jorge loses fights, even the fight that you go back and watch against him and Ben Henderson, a guy who's a 155er, pretty much losing the same way over 5 rounds, getting pushed up against the cage, having a lackadaisical approach, and doesn't really do much to really, distance himself from Ben Henderson in that fight. Exactly the same thing is going to happen here with Kamaru Usman. We see Usman go out there and maybe give up the first round, maybe, but I think after that, it's going to be all Usman going forward from there. And I think he grinds out Masvidal here. So I'm going Usman by decision. One thing I will give Masvidal, the guy hasn't been finished in 12 years, right? Last time we saw him got finished was that inverted triangle choke by Tobi Yamada back in Bellator, but it's been 12 years since then. Masvidal's gone up against some heavy hitters, some solid jiu-jitsu players, not to mention Damian Maia, who was hanging off his back for the majority of that fight, and he was able to shuck off the submission attempts and stayed in that fight to see the judge's decision. So I'm going Kamaru Usman by decision. We're getting minus 130 on that line right now. I think that's a great line. Again, it's all more so for the durability of Masvidal. I just think that Masvidal will be able to stay in this fight for 25 minutes, and we'll see Usman go out there and grind him out the way that he's able to. It's not going to be an exciting one. Don't expect a firecracker like we saw with Colby Covington or that crazy fight that we saw with Gilbert Burns over 15 minutes. This one's going to look very similar to that first fight, and for good reason, because that's the best way and least resistance that Kamaru Usman is going to be able to secure this victory. And why fuck with your legacy that you are creating at this point of time in your career? You're getting to the last couple fights in your career. Why are you going to go out there and try to risk it all by trading in the pocket with Jorge Masvidal, who's clearly the better technical striker? We can all agree on that. And he definitely does have some power on his shots, but let's not play that game. Let's clinch him up, foot stomp him all you want. I don't give a fuck. Let's take home that decision victory, and I think that's exactly what he'll be able to do here. So I like Kamaru Usman, decision, minus 130. I think that's a great line. How are you seeing this one?
First and foremost, shout out to you mentioning my boy Tobi Yamada. That inverted triangle, still to this day, one of the nastiest submissions you've ever seen in your life. But yeah, Masvidal's been around for a long time, and that's kind of the theme here, is that he is a journeyman. You can't get around it. He's been a journeyman pretty much his entire career. Comes from the bare knuckle boxing days. He's got his own promotion actually now. Yeah. But I mean, his life was dramatically changed by a viral video of him knocking out Ben Askren with a flying knee. Up until that point, he had fought Strikeforce, he had fought Bellator, he had fought the UFC. He's fighting on prelims. He wins some fights, he loses some fights. He's in a lot of these close decisions where he believes he won, but ultimately he's just not quite doing enough. He was on record talking to the judges after the fights multiple times, being like, "Why did I lose that fight? Please explain to me what I did wrong." Just like, because he can't. It's a head scratcher why he's losing all these close decisions. But that's the life of a journeyman. That's going through the motion. At some point, he gets a Darren Till fight. He's brought into England. He's supposed to lose. He's the underdog against Darren Till. And what does he go out there? He goes and he exposes Till as somebody who's not quite at this level, at least certainly not yet. He catches him. He knocks him out. It's a brilliant little knockout, and it puts George Masvidal on the map, but not in an overly big way. All it does is set him up for that Ben Askren fight. And then hitting Ben Askren, it's like it changed everything. Now at this point, he believes he's Tony Montana. He believes he's Scarface. He's showing up to events wearing a Gucci house coat. He's talking all type of nonsense. He's like really much being somebody that he's not. But I get it. It's the pro wrestling approach to fighting. Colby Covington really doesn't believe most of that stuff either. But you're playing up a character. But like his character, I don't know. It's just like you had a sweet character. You were street fighting Masvidal. You were wearing the Hawaiian shirt, the cool guy from Miami, and the Cuban immigrant. Father came over here for a better life, living the American fucking dream. Like what better gimmick could you want than that? Now he's playing like fake Connor, like he's playing like And so he's dodging fights as well. Doesn't want to fight Colby. On record being like, I'll fight you when I decide I'm fighting you. But that's not how it works. Fight him right now. He's the number 1 guy. You're the number 2 guy? Fight him right now. Doesn't want to fight him. Doesn't want to fight these, just wants the money fight. And so they create a fake title for him and then he gets to fight Nate Diaz. And after winning a very one-sided fight against Nate Diaz, in which he controls every second of every minute of every round until it's over, he's like drumming up a rematch with Nate Diaz. Like he wants to fight him again. Like what are you doing? That's the stuff I don't like to see. But you can't fault him. You know, he's mid-30s. He's got 50 pro fights under his belt. He's been there. He's done that. He's fought for the Strikeforce world title. He's fought for the UFC world title. And he's finally enjoying a taste of the good life. He's finally got some money. He's finally got publicity. He's finally got sponsors sending him stuff. He's finally living that good life. So yeah, he wants the big fight. But Tyron Woodley did the same shit. He didn't want to fight the top challengers anymore. He wanted to fight Nate Diaz. He wanted to fight Conor McGregor. He only wanted money fights. And you saw Tyron skill, career, down the shitter, right? If you're not testing yourself, you're not improving. And I think Usman is just motivated to just become, again, I mentioned this with Paul yesterday, but there's like a vibe going on with the 3 African champions. You got Francis Ngannou, Israel Adesanya, and Kamaru Usman. And there's a huge momentum wave right now. You know, they're doing awesome things. They're putting African MMA on the map. They're shining a light, and they're getting some money there. They're getting sponsors there. You think that there's a UFC Chinese Performance Institute now? Great. Put it at UFC Africa Performance Institute. You know what kind of quality of fighter that they're going to be able to produce? But he's focused on winning. He's focused on legacy, like you mentioned. You got George's focused on the money. I want to make that money. I want to get that big payday so I can retire comfortably. And Usman is something more than that. And that's what made George a great champion. He had money. He had accolades. He had respect. But he wanted legacy. He just wanted more. That's what drove him. There's a fire. There was just like, you're never satisfied. Listen, when he's 40, 50, 60 years old, it'll be a miserable existence. Because it's like nothing's ever going to satisfy that guy. There's a drive within him to just continuously do great things. And as a result, he willingly is like, you want me to fight my jiu-jitsu coach? You want me to fight one of my close personal friends? You want me to leave my gym that got me to this level, that have poured hours into me, getting me here? You want me to just abandon all that and fight this guy? Sure. Just because it's a fight. I'll take it. He'd take any fight. He'd fight his mother if he had to. It's a desire to, that's obviously a stretch. But I'm saying it's a desire to compete. It's a desire to win. Usman's got that. He's a consummate professional. Now, as much as one guy wants it, and as much as one guy set himself up, and one guy's a professional, one guy he's the cardio and the wrestling. We've seen this fight already. 6 days notice or not, the stats remain the same. You know, Usman's probably going to control him up against the cage. He's going to foot stomp him. He's going to slow him down. He's going to slowly grind these rounds. He's going to complete those takedowns. Full camp or not, probably plays at the same thing. But this is punchy kicky, man. This is the hurt business. This is the fight game. And as far as puncher's chances go, Masvidal is alive in that regard. You saw him hurt Usman the first time around. That was on short notice. You mentioned you thought he was relatively in shape. Maybe he was. He had to cut 20 pounds the day before the weigh-ins. So that would scream, I had a fucking tough weight cut, dude. And he still went out there for 5 rounds and managed to hurt him in the first. But then you see Gilbert Burns, a natural 55er. Also, in theory, I didn't think he was that hurt, but, clips him. The older you get, just like George. George got knocked out by Matt Serra. Like, come on. George got boxed up by Johnny Hendricks on the gas for that one, by the way. But, he did get boxed up by him. I still think he won, but you know what I mean? It was a close fight.
Yeah.
It's like shit can absolutely happen. And with Masvidal, he has nothing to lose. So what happens if he gets blanketed again? It's no big deal. His stock doesn't go down. It already happened. He's already got 14 pro losses. People don't really care if he gets blanketed here. But if he goes out and throws a dazzling flying knee and clips him, or he lets his hands go and hurts him, or he comes in with, actually having a good camp, and Mike Thomas Brown putting a good game plan together, like, could he not make this happen? Is he alive in that regard? Maybe. But it's like, I learned my lesson when I took Gaethje over Khabib on the basis of a puncher's chance. It's like cardio and wrestling is what got you to the GOAT status. It's why you have current GOAT status. Usman is riding pretty close to GOAT status. George, my boy. George Canadian. We love George. George, the OG original. But it's like, as far as putting resumes together, this guy's resume looks pretty good. Like, how can you discredit that? So I got to go with Usman. Again, if you don't like the money line, you go with the decision. George Masvidal is cast iron. You don't submit this guy. You don't knock this guy out. He took the fight on 6 days' notice and survived. Now he's got a full camp. So I think that if Usman's winning by decision. If Masvidal wins, he could knock him out. If Masvidal wins, it doesn't figure to be on the scorecard.
No.
But because we're taking Usman, it would be an Usman by decision, and that improves your minus 425 price tag to a minus 130 price tag. Like it way better. And actually, you and I, we did a propping you up for the last time they fought, and we were on the same thing. It was Usman by decision. Came through that night, hoping for a similar result here.
Yeah, actually, I think you're mistaken regarding that one. I think we did the propping you up for the Gilbert Burns one, and we had him at via decision, and we're like, that's what I was going to tee up here when we go over our three best bets. I know we both have Usman via decision as one of our three best bets, so he's probably going to go out there and finish Jorge Masvidal this weekend, given the luck that we have.
Rodrigo Dam style.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Speaking of which, let's get to the three best bets so we can wrap this thing up for you guys. Again, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, me, Cody, Dan Levy from Half the Battle, and Brett Apley will be breaking down the fights one last time for you guys with the weigh-ins in mind. All right, let's get these going right here. Let me just get the slides are ready. All right. So first and foremost, I got Usman via decision. That is a no-brainer here. I really like the spot for him. Again, Masvidal, super durable. It's going to be hard for Usman to put him away, no matter how good Usman truly is here. But I do think we see him grind it out. Super boring fight. I think this card is going to come from a screeching halt because you're coming off of Rose Namajunas going up against Weili Zhang, and then we're just going to have this screech to Kamaru Usman going out there and just decisioning Jorge Masvidal over 25 minutes. Funny enough, we had Weili Zhang against Ioane and Jacek, followed by Yoel Romero and Israel Adesanya. So I think it's going to look the same this weekend. All right, next up I have Karl Roberson via KO at plus 335. I think he keeps the fight on the feet for the majority of it, rips up the lead leg of Brendan Allen, and then eventually puts his punches together to knock him out. Plus 335. I love that line. He may be even a good straight play, but let's just wait and see him what he looks like on the scales first before we go out there and invest in our guy Karl Roberson, who's had immense battles with the scales apparently. So let's see how he looks tomorrow morning first, and then we'll decide if that's truly a good play. Lastly, I got to go with the round props here. Weili Zhang in rounds 4 and 5, you got plus 1,400 and plus 1,900. I think these are very solid spots for her to go out there and finish Rose late. We know Rose will be competitive early in this fight, but the longer that it goes, I expect Zhang's power-heavy style and power combinations to truly start to take over, and she should start to run away with this fight with the very good probability of her finishing this fight the later that it goes. All right, Cody, you're up.
Yeah, so we're definitely on the same page with Usman by decision. I think he just does the same thing he did to George last time. Go out there, grind him up against the cage, get the takedowns when you can, just have the little bit better work rate, have the pace, break this guy down. We've seen him do it once before. I don't think a whole lot changes, full camp or not. So Usman by decision, minus 130. We're going to move on close to even money, but Shevchenko versus Andrade fight goes the distance, minus 105. Honestly, I think this thing's banking rounds. Shevchenko's got that wrestling ability to take this fight to the ground, grind it out. If for whatever reason Andrade is able to dump her and take her down and hold top pressure, I still don't think she's finishing her. I mean, you've got two world-class opponents here, world-class talents. Shevchenko not likely getting finished by anybody, so I feel safe in that regard. With Andrade, does she falter? Does she fall apart? This is a big spot for her. She's got a never-say-die attitude. And in the fight with Rose Namajunas the second time around, you saw her really coming along strong in that third round. So as long as she doesn't get tired, she's going to get some rounds as well. Fight goes the distance, minus 105. And then, yeah, you just can't take all these close to even money plays all the time. You got to get something good for some plus money. And yeah, this one doesn't look very appealing to a lot of people. I get this. Carnelossi by decision, plus 420. Outside of the number being funny, why would we take Carnelossi over a fighter in Liang who's been submitted 4 times and this and that? Again, it comes down to a style clash, right? Liang hasn't lost a fight since she was 21 years old, 3 years ago. She's 24 now. She's filling out. She's getting better. But beyond that, she's been submitted 4 times. She's never been knocked out. So with Carnelossi has 8 of her 9 career wins by knockout. She's a knockout fighter. She's a threat standing. She has that John Lineker style, move forward, wing her hands. She's got big power, clearly. A favor over Angela Hill in her UFC debut. There was a lot of respect coming out of her. But if she has her way and she goes out there and she boxes up Liang, hurts Liang, Liang's never been knocked out. So Liang's going to go with these desperation takedowns, try to clinch her, try to slow her down as much as she can, ultimately get out muscled, ultimately lose. I think this thing's going the distance. And just go the distance is plus money. But Carnelossi by decision, plus 420, too much for me to look away from. So that's a prop that I'm looking for this weekend for sure.
All right, that looks pretty good to me. We got some good plus money plays there, as well as somewhat safer props there with the fight goes to decision for Shevchenko, and then obviously the Usman decision. Hopefully, Usman doesn't channel his inner Gilbert Burns fight and finishes Jorge Masvidal this time around, and we can actually cast that minus 130 ticket. All right, that's pretty much a wrap on the show. I'll give Cody the stage in terms of anything he wants to say on the way out here, and then I'll bring us home. Cody, what do you got for the viewers right now?
I mean, shit, we were going to go a quick episode and then we're 2.5 hours
It's
in,
always that discussion, brother. Yeah, just let me just peel the curtains back a little bit for the viewers here. We always start like when I invite him into the stream and right before we're about to go live, we're like, yo, we'll try to keep this at like an hour and a half. Yeah, I mean, let's try not to get over 2 hours. We'll see how it goes with the flow of the show. Obviously, Cody's going to be back tomorrow night, so we can go a little bit more in depth on that show. And then here we are. Fucking 2 hours and 13 minutes later, still going at it. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Cody.
No, I mean, that's it. Once we get flowing, we get talking, it's always a good time. So yeah, there's pretty much not much more else I can say. However, we will be doing the post-weigh-in show tomorrow, so we can have a little bit more to discuss with hopefully everybody making weight, hopefully all the fights stay together, but kind of break down what everyone's looking at the weigh-ins. Everyone obviously knows they can find me on Twitter at CJ Saftic, working on potentially getting my own channel up, Patreon, all that stuff. I want to just work on getting that last episode of Bookie Beatdown Dogger Pass podcast out of the way next Tuesday, and then we'll see where things are going. But yeah, lots of exciting time, lots of exciting fights coming up. Want to just thank everybody for taking the time and joining the chat. And I know last week I'd said I'd work on my lighting for this week's episode, and literally it died. Like, I don't know, like the show went for a long time. It made it like an hour and a bit, and then it died off. So now I've seen a couple comments. They're like, hanging out in, Toad atmosphere, having a glass of wine. Like, yeah, I guess it's a romantic setting. But for tomorrow's episode, post-weigh-in, I can't let the rest of the cast, outshine me, no pun intended. So I'll have my lighting on point for tomorrow.
Well, one thing I do want to bring up, and shout out to my guy for UFC bet picks here, is Dogger Pass truly ending, or are you guys actually going to be doing it over Zoom? Whatever you can reveal to us. Obviously, if you guys want to keep things under wraps for now, I completely respect that. But just for the viewers that want to know, what is the future plans for that?
Yeah. So the show will continue to go on as it has. It's been 7 years in the making now. It's just we won't be able to do it together like in studio anymore. So Paul and Pat are moving out to Nova Scotia. I'm staying in Ontario, where that doesn't seem like it's super far. It's like a 23-hour drive door to door, no stop. So to put things into perspective, I could drive to Florida in the exact same amount of time, right?
Yeah,
it's pretty far away. Now my girlfriend is actually from Nova Scotia, so I pre-pandemic was going 2-3 times a year. Be able to see those guys during those times. We'll shoot some stuff when we're down there. But yeah, I mean, I went to college with Pat and Paul. I lived with Pat Man for the first 2 years that I moved to Toronto. I've got nothing but good things to say about those guys. So like a little bit of the magic feels to me like is getting lost. We'll still do the show. It'll still be, you and I do a show and we do it over stream. It doesn't doesn't feel like we're missing a beat. It feels like we're in the same room. It feels like we're having conversation. Like that's all well and good. But same thing when you and I did some stuff in studio, it was dope.
It was so much better. It was so much better.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's hard to get away from that. But ultimately, like we started the show, we just wanted to give viewers a free show where they were our picks. And if they want to tail it or fade it or hopefully learn something by the end of the episode. But it was always one of those shows like free to the public, two guys, two buddies talking fights. And I mean, people have been nothing but short of supportive. We started off with like a small little group of people and have grown it over the years. Went from, 500 views per episode to 10,000 views per episode and built a lot of, fun times and good memories. And yeah, I mean, I've always had a lot of fondness in my heart for that. But as such is life. I'm 29 years old now. I'm about to turn 30. I gave Fight Network the best 10 years of my life. I started there when I was 19. I'm 29 now. So 10 years, Paul and I did the show together for 7 years. Pat and I have known each other for a decade. Like, I just feel like going through changes, right? Positive changes, but just like anybody, the ball's got to keep rolling. You look at it from like making the jump from LFA to the big leagues, right? Just at some point, you got to leave your local regional scene and do different things and branch out. And so I'm not calling Dogger Pass the regional scene. To me, it's the Super Bowl. To me, it's as good of a show as anybody has, right? It's just easily. Like, maybe it's time to just do other stuff as well. So love doing the show with you, my man. Love spending nearly 3 hours talking fights because to me, I really like doing it. And if you're still in the comment section listening to a kid ramble on, I'm almost 30. Oh, fuck.
Life is passing you by, Cody.
Then maybe you feel the same way. You're a fight fan. You've had the good times. And let's continue to make some memories and cash some tickets, buddy.
Exactly. I appreciate it, Cody. Dude, always, you guys can find us 8 p.m. Eastern here, as you guys know. Can't wait to continue doing this with Cody. And obviously, we'll see what happens with the future of Dog Ear Pass and all that stuff for Cody. But yeah, shout out to everybody in the chat. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and reminder, as it's the fourth time, I remind you guys, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, Cody's back on the channel with Dan Levy and Brett Appley, and we're going to break down the fights for you one last time. So, Cody, I'm actually going to let you go. There's one more thing that I want to plug on the back end here. So I'll let you go so you can go on and do your things on this Thursday evening. So appreciate you stopping by. You can head on out of here whenever you like. And I want to give a big shout out here to my guy Biggs Omega, who just brought it up, the Dog of the Night Challenge. So I do want to just quickly plug this on the back end here. The Dog of the Night Challenge is a game that I pretty much made up, where you pick one underdog play. It's either a fighter or an over-under. You pick one over plus money play for the next 10 UFC events. Whoever is able to accumulate the most amount of profit in that amount of time cashes out based on whatever the prize pool is. So we have a $25 game. We have a $100 game. We split it 65%, 25%, 10% from first, second, and third. And it's been getting a crazy amount of love. We got about 70 people that are in the Lock of the Night Challenge right now. I believe the Dog of the Night Challenge will start to eclipse that number based on the amount of traction that it's currently getting. So if you guys are interested in a pool like that, a game like that, it's probably the sharpest game that you'll find for MMA guys, considering you'll have to just dog hunt out here. If you guys are interested in that, slide in my DMs on Twitter at MMALOTN, or if you guys have Instagram, slide in my DMs over there at MMALOTN on Twitter. I'll get you guys signed up. The deadline is this Sunday. So the day after UFC 261 is the deadline for the game. If you guys want to get in on it, you're more than welcome to. I can't wait to get this game going. It should be hella fun. Shout out to Biggs Omega, who's actually going to be more than likely cashing first place for the current game that's ending this week. And so shout out to Biggs Omega. And thank you for reminding me to bring that to the spot. All right. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Like, subscribe, do all that shit. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Actually, the next stream that I have is 9 a.m. tomorrow morning for the live weigh-in show. I'm going to be watching the weigh-ins live with you guys, talking some shit in the chat, updating you guys on what the weigh-ins are looking like. And then 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, the ultimate weigh-in show. Me, Dan Levy from Best Fight Pick / Half the Battle, Cody Saftic, who you just saw, and then Brett Appley from Daily Fan MMA. Great lineup that I have for you guys. I could only bring out the all-stars for this big UFC 261 event. So shout out to everybody that's going to be joining us tomorrow night. Appreciate you guys as always. Peace out.